The city of Blue Dragon Star. It was a beautiful, warm day. Chinfong was walking down the street when suddenly the sky darkened, and everyone began to look up at the sky. The sky turned almost black. People thought that the Blue Dragon Star was being attacked by aliens, or that it was the end of the world. Then a screen appeared in front of every resident of the city. It was an impressive and shocking piece of technology. Words appeared on the screen. Soon a world of chaos will open. The Heavenly Chaos Massacre. Healthy people aged 15 to 50 from all over the world will be transported to the Heavenly Chaos at the same time. This is a place where you can encounter ferocious giant beasts. Demons are everywhere and various races exist. Here you can die at any moment or gain eternal life. But it is also full of treasures and adventures. After the message appeared on the screens, people began to move. A message came that this was the only way to save the city. Global chaos begins. The place where Chinfong ended up was called Newbie Village 911. The initial population of each village was 1,000 people. Now Chinfong realized that this was no joke. Notifications were coming in. He was in a newcomer's house. No one could enter without the owner's consent. Resting in the house doubled the speed of strength and energy recovery. The Tiandao screen became available, which was like an interface in games, and there was also a screen with personal information. The screen displayed all the data: age, name, skills, characteristics, and level. There was also a general chat channel, which Chinfong looked into. Everyone was very scared, not knowing what to do or where they had ended up. The elderly and children were all very frightened. People's scores were roughly the same, differing only minimally. A window popped up informing Chinfong that he was about to awaken his primary innate talent based on the indicators of 4 parameters. Innate talents were divided into 9 ranks: F, E, D, C, B, A, S, SS, and SSS. The first rank was the weakest, and the last was the strongest. The SS and SSS ranks were considered unique. After selecting the talent awakening function, Chinfong found himself in another strange place surrounded by spheres. Based on logic, Chinfong realized that a special talent must be in a ball of an unusual color and that he must try to find it. Suddenly, the spheres began to surround Chinfong and blind him with waves of light. A notification popped up again. SSS rank talent, Infinite Extraction. It can be used on any target to obtain a random effect. The awakening of the village's talents was complete. Only 2 people out of 1,000 received high rank talents. The guy named Liu Xuan immediately revealed his talent in the chat. S-rank magnetic field control. Chinfong decided not to reveal himself because he knew that there would come a time when he would not be welcomed with open arms in this cruel world. This talent was his main support and secret trump card, which he could not reveal to anyone yet. The next message said that in 10 seconds, the trial for newcomers would begin in the village. Those who did not meet the requirements would be eliminated. Weaponry for newcomers became available for equipping. From this strange screen, Chinfong took out a short sword for newcomers, +2 to attack power. The sword was pretty good for 2 points. Chinfong realized that if he could raise his stats to at least 30 points, he would become incredibly strong. But how to do that? He had to test his talent with this sword, since Chinfong still didn't understand the essence of his strength. Infinite Extraction was activated, and it was successful. He removed the rust and residue from the sword, and it was transformed into a purified steel sword. The attack power of this sword was already +5 points instead of 2, and the item became first level instead of 0. Then Chinfong reactivated Infinite Extraction on the sword, but it didn't work because the quality of the target was too low, and the extraction limit had been reached. People came out into the streets and discussed the news. It turned out that if anyone failed to reach the 10th level, they would be exterminated, and that the trial would last 7 days for newcomers. In the middle of the village stood a huge blue screen. This must be the exit from the village of newbies into the cruel world of monsters. Everyone was curious to see who would be the first to risk stepping beyond the light barrier. Behind Chinfong, an explosion thundered. A guy was standing in the crater, Wang Qian. His combat power was 1 star. People were curious about Wang Qian's talent and surrounded him with curiosity. His D-rank talent was Unbridled Power, which tripled when used. From what he read in the chat, Chinfong remembered that Wang Qian's strength was already equal to 18, and if you tripled that, it would be 54. No wonder he broke the boulder. It immediately became clear that Wang Qian was one of the strongest players in their village. To prove it, Wang Qian declared that he was ready to leave the village first and show the monsters who was stronger. He stepped out, full of confidence. The forest was gloomy and dark. Wang Qian felt like he was being watched, and he felt uneasy. Before Wang Qian could look back, a huge first-level beast, the Blood Rabbit, was already standing behind him, and Wang Qian was no more. Everyone waiting near the village barrier received notification of this. Less than a couple of minutes had passed since Wang Qian left the village, and this was the result. Panic broke out. If even such a strong player couldn't survive, what could they expect? A notification came that the village's protective barrier would hold back the beasts outside, but they would be able to enter the village once the newbie protection period ended. People began to form teams to gain a numerical advantage over the monsters. After all, if a first-level monster had 4 stars of power, there was a chance that 4 players with 1 star could defeat it. But Chinfong refused to team up with anyone. He couldn't show his innate talent yet. 15 minutes had passed since the first group left, so Chinfong decided to go on alone. He stepped over the barrier. The world outside looked quite hostile. This environment awakened some primitive feelings in Chinfong. Almost immediately, Chinfong discovered Wang Qian's body lying in the middle of the forest at the very beginning of the path. It was worth building up his strength. And an idea came to Chinfeng's mind. He activated Infinite Extraction on Wang Qian's body. The extraction was successful and he obtained a D-rank talent, Frenzy. This plan had truly succeeded. His strength had tripled from 8 points to 24. Chinfeng was ecstatic. This was how his talent worked. Over time, he could try to obtain hundreds or even thousands of innate talents, and with them, he could reach the pinnacle of human potential. Next, Chinfeng took the short sword of a novice from Wang Qian and also turned it into a purified steel sword. Now he had two. The first level blood rabbit lay nearby. Most likely it had been surrounded and defeated. Experimenting again, Chinfeng managed to extract 2 points of strength from the rabbit. With such success, one could quickly become the strongest. As in the story with the sword, Chinfeng tried to extract power from the rabbit again, but a notification showed that extraction only works once for anything below level 20. Then Chinfeng decided to follow the first large group. It was likely that they would leave behind dead monsters from which he could extract power. Then a notification came that one person from the group had died, from the battle with the giant rodent of the first level. The rabbit and its power were good, but Chinfeng decided to find the dead player to extract his talent as well. That would be much more useful. As Chinfeng was moving forward, a notification came that another member of the group had died. Apparently, they had gotten into a difficult situation, as it involved the giant rodent again. But he went on. Here was Zhou Cheng. Apparently, he was the first to fall to the giant rodent, and right next to him lay Li Yue. And right behind them, in the tall grass, Chinfeng saw the monster. The giant rodent was a huge rat. The beast's combat power was 3 stars. Under normal circumstances, his 1 star was no match for the beast. But the beast was seriously wounded, with its paws damaged all over. There was a chance to win. Chinfeng jumped towards the rat as suddenly as possible and struck it with his sword. The battle with the rat was quite long and difficult because, even though it was wounded, it resisted. In the end, Chinfeng won. He would be more careful in the future. After destroying the rodent, Chinfeng's first level status went from 0 out of 100 to 30 out of 100. A good start. Naturally, he then used his skill of infinite extraction from the rat's body. He gained 2 points of dexterity. Now it was time to get what Chinfeng had come for. He headed toward the bodies. He obtained the F-rank talent, Enhanced Sense of Smell. Now it would be easier to find what he needed by smell. Using this talent, Chinfeng tried to understand what was nearby. He could smell flowers and some kind of stench, and he could sense everything to the maximum. Someone was nearby. He could feel it. The first group was cornering the second huge rodent into a trap. They attacked it with swords. And this time they won. The group was unlucky and encountered 2 monsters in a row. Everyone was injured and 2 members of the group were killed. If it hadn't been for the quick thinking of the leader who ordered them to attack after retreating, luring it out and surrounding it here, the rest would probably have died too. As Chinfeng overheard, the group was planning to return to the wounded rat before anyone else found it. Deciding that they needed to get out of there as soon as possible, Chinfeng used the speed increase talent he had extracted from the second body in the clearing. For 3 hours, Chinfeng wandered around to understand the situation, while the others destroyed the monsters. There were 5 types of first-level beasts here: the giant rodent, the bloody rabbit, the gray plains wolf, the mad boar, and the extremely poisonous snake. This was already the 4th rabid boar on which Chinfeng had used extraction. As it turned out, after 3 successful extractions of identical first-level beasts, the limit was reached. It wasn't that simple. In the last hour, Tiandao had reported 7 deaths, but Chinfeng had only found 1 so far, and he had gained the talent of improved vision. His combat power had reached 2 stars. Finally, Chinfeng smelled the scent of a poisonous snake. This was the last first-level beast on which he could try extraction. But besides the smell of the snake, there was something else. A very pleasant aroma. There it is, a flower near the snake. It seemed like the snake was guarding it. With such a fragrance and such a beast protecting it, this flower or fruit was not here by chance. This snake is the strongest first-level beast on the novice plane, giving 40 energy points. What a good catch! And then the snake detected Chinfeng's presence. It rushed at him, attacking, but the snake was surprisingly slow. The snake's scales were too strong to cut through. Although slow, the snake was very strong. It was ready to sink its poisonous fangs into Chinfeng. He had to use his talent, Fierce Strength, and now Chinfeng managed to cut the snake's body into several pieces with his sword. If it weren't for the snake's full stomach and its slowness, it would have been much more difficult to deal with it. After examining the contents of the snake's stomach, Chinfeng realized that the snake's prey had been a human. The endless extraction was successful, and Chinfeng once again gained an improvement in his vision. But now, due to receiving the talent again, it had improved. Night vision became available. He also gained the skill of True Vision, which allows him to see the true nature of things. True Sight became Chinfeng's first skill. This means that when identical talents are found, they are strengthened, and new skills may also appear. The True Vision skill instantly revealed what kind of fruit it was. Red snake fruit. Increases endurance and resistance to poisons when used. The fruit proved to be very useful, and Chinfeng didn't hesitate to pick it and eat it right away. 8 additional endurance points were gained, and resistance to poisons increased by 100%. Wanting to extract something else, Chinfeng used his talent on the flower again, and obtained the essence of a spiritual plant. Using it would give him 2 stamina points. When Chinfeng swallowed the essence, a notification appeared stating that his strength level had been raised to 2 stars. Feeling his strength, Chinfeng decided to destroy another snake, and then head to a larger land to increase his power. Suddenly, stones flew at Chinfeng from all sides. He thought someone had ambushed him. Chinfong barely managed to dodge them, but as it turned out, it was no ambush. Another poisonous snake appeared just as Chinfong was about to go look for it. How convenient. But the snake wasn't alone. It was surrounded by a group of people who attacked it. The leader of the group was Lei Yu, one of the few people with D-rank light control talent. Of the 8 members of the group, only 6 remained. That meant 2 had died. While there was still time, Chinfong decided to try his true vision on the snake. In addition to the basic data, there was a chance of obtaining loot, and it was practically 0, but not quite. This meant that if he destroyed the snake, there was a chance of getting something. Small, but it was there. Suddenly, the battle ended. The snake was defeated, and fortunately, all the people were alive. The group leader, Lei Yu, began to glow. As it turned out, he had reached the 2nd level. As Chinfong understood from the conversation, the group was now looking for the 2nd snake, which he had already destroyed. That snake had eaten the brother of one of the group members, and they wanted revenge. However, the hiding place from which Chinfeng had been watching and listening was discovered. A girl from the group was an excellent archer. The group members ordered Chinfeng to come out of his hiding place. Most likely, this girl had a talent for improving her hearing. When Chinfeng came out with his hands up and said he was just passing by, the girl recognized him. But Chinfeng didn't know her. The group leader asked Liu Yan how she knew Feng, but she said she had just seen him in the chat. This seemed strange to Chinfeng. Liu Yan was curious why Chinfeng was here alone. He couldn't wait for everyone to leave because he wanted to extract something from the snake's body. Then Liu Yan suggested to her leader that Chinfeng join their group. The leader asked Chinfeng to demonstrate his talent first. Chinfeng refused, which surprised everyone. Although he wanted to form his own group, he had to do it without anyone finding out about his talent. Although the girl Liu Yan did not want to let Chinfeng go, he left, and the group leader remained silent. The group went on their way. Liu Yan knew that Chinfeng didn't remember her, but she really hoped that he would survive. Soon the group came to the first snake, which had been torn apart. Cheng Jun was lying nearby. Everyone understood that only a strong player could have done this. From the dryness of the stains, they determined that the snake had been killed about 15 minutes ago, and there were traces of only one person, a professional and a loner. The guys immediately thought of Chinfeng, but could it have been him? A message popped up. Someone had reached the 3rd level, and the top 100 newcomers in the current village were now available. In first place was not Chinfeng, but Lu Xuan with the 3rd level, and in second place was Long Shan with the 2nd level. Chinfeng was only in 47th place with his 1st level. 4 hours passed. 8 people had already reached the 2nd level, and Lu Xuan was the first to reach the 3rd level. It was time for Chinfeng to speed up. And then there was this new announcement about the reward system. The first person to reach the 10th level would receive a golden chest, the second would receive a silver chest, and the third would receive a bronze chest. The first 100 people to reach the 10th level would receive a chest as a reward. The ranks of the chests ranged from the lowest rank of dark steel to bronze, silver, gold, and dark gold. The purple diamond rank is the historical rank and the best mythical rank. The competition has begun. To get the best reward, Chinfeng was determined to take first place. He set about destroying local monsters such as the steppe wolf with great determination. This beast was the strongest Chinfeng had ever encountered. Defeating it was not easy. However, after defeating it, Chinfeng gained 100 experience points, reaching the 2nd level, and his strength, endurance, and intelligence all increased by 10 points. Moreover, by a lucky chance, a dark steel chest fell out. Chinfeng was hoping for a 2nd rank weapon or equipment, and that's exactly what happened. Inside the chest was a 2nd rank weapon, the Bloody Wolf's battle sword, an excellent sword. Now he need not fear encounters with other unique beasts. And just as Chinfeng was thinking this, he was surrounded by the companions of the silver wolf he had summoned before its death. It was the perfect time to test his new 2nd rank sword. The wolf's sudden attack nearly knocked Chinfeng off his feet, but these dogs were no match for him. He destroyed them with ease. After leveling up, his speed, strength, and endurance had increased significantly. This time it took less than a minute to destroy the 5 silver wolves. Leia's team was also thrilled with his 2nd level. Thanks to his strength, they managed to avoid trouble with the bloodthirsty rabbit. Then the group received a notification that the newcomer Chinfeng was the first to destroy a mutated wild beast and earned a prestige point. Prestige was extremely valuable, and as points accumulated, rewards were given. The group was shocked. How did Chinfeng do it alone? Maybe these mutated beasts weren't that strong. But then reports of people dying from the collapse of these mutants started pouring in, and it became clear that they were powerful. One mutated wild beast killed 4 players at once, one of whom was a 2nd level player. These beasts were monstrously strong. Chinfeng rose sharply from 47th place in the rankings to 5th. After destroying several beasts at once, Chinfeng rested, enjoying his power. Then suddenly a message appeared in the chat from a survivor of the group that had been killed by the terrifying beast. The man had survived thanks to his speed and was begging for help, leaving his approximate coordinates. The fanged mutated boar was what Chinfeng wanted, so he rushed there immediately. He wasn't that far away. First, he found the bodies, but something went wrong. The endless extraction did not work as it should. The evolution of repetitive skills did not work. But the system gave no clues until Chinfeng figured it out himself. Because he had such a talent, and humans of lower ranks did not, these talents did not overlap or reinforce each other. From the tracks on the ground, Chinfeng realized that someone's body had been dragged along the ground, but he didn't understand why the fanged boar would do that. Unless the boar was going to eat Liu Yu-chan. But he had a D-rank talent. He had to find the body as soon as possible. A sense of danger emanated from the cave that was the fanged boar's lair. But it wasn't a boar, it was a mutated poisonous snake. A mutated beast with a fighting power of 5 stars. The boar had a maximum of 4. The snake was on a completely different level. It was much stronger than anyone Chinfeng had encountered before. And it could also release poison. The situation was complicated. Its poisonous eye skill struck Chinfeng's vision. He couldn't see anything now. Waving his sword in all directions at the beasts surrounding him, Chinfeng tried to make his way to the cave exit. He destroyed several beasts along the way. Only one remained. He had to figure out where it was. It was difficult without his sight. It attacked from behind. The last beast was a poisonous snake. Although Chinfeng couldn't see anything, he still had many talents, including his sense of smell, so it was not worth underestimating him. Enraged, Chinfeng delivered a crushing blow to the snake's head with his sword. He obtained a dark steel chest, in addition to experience. Finally, Chinfeng reached the 3rd level. All his skills increased by 10 points each, and he gained 5 attribute points. After reaching the new level, his health was fully restored, and his eyes were healed as well. It was fortunate that his level had increased at that moment. Without his vision, it would have been difficult. Chinfeng opened the chest. There was a spatial gate, an incredibly useful thing. Most likely there were things more frightening than wild beasts behind this gate, but Chinfeng entered them. His strength should be enough to protect himself now. The first thing Chinfeng saw were first-level spiritual plants, and then there were beasts. They were sitting near the body, but there was something else there, some kind of creature. Using his true vision, Fing saw who it was. It was a representative of the undead race, 4th level with 6 stars of combat power. Moreover, his skills and talents were hidden, and there were wild beasts on his side. Chinfeng decided that for now, he needed to run away. Suddenly, the undead spoke. He said he would use Chinfeng's flesh for rebirth. The beasts rushed at him and chains stretched out from the undead. These 2 chains captured Chinfeng. He couldn't move. The undead had been waiting a long time for a living body to be reborn. Gathering all his will and strength, Chinfeng realized that he would not survive if he did not escape, and he broke the chains. The undead was stunned that an ordinary 3rd-level human had escaped his control. However, Chinfeng could not completely resist the mind penetration skill. However, he found a way out and added all his attribute points to his mind. There were 10 points. Now the undead ordered the boar to attack Chinfeng. Finally, the effect of his mind kicked in. Chin was able to break free from the mind control, and he defeated the beast. The poisonous liquid from the snake's glands could be useful in future battles. Now that it was clear that the undead could not move, Chinfeng was curious how he would defend himself without the help of the beasts, and he couldn't. Chin killed him and received 210 experience points and 10 justice points. He also completed the hidden exam of the system and became a 1st-level judge who can destroy those who have broken the rules of the gods, and all kinds of evil creatures. This advantage is available to only 1 in a billion. Such a turn of events was extremely unexpected. Being a judge is cool. There was also an opportunity to obtain the skill of taming beasts. If you learn this skill, you can order a whole group of wild beasts to hunt. Chinfeng wanted to try this skill right away, but the conditions for activation were not met. A reminder came that the innate talent of rank D, Mind Enhancement, combined with the Beast Taming Pill could activate the skill. And his innate C-rank talent, Sixth Senses, could activate the Beast Taming skill. Chinfeng didn't know what kind of pill it was or how to get it. Perhaps the undead had it. Chin began to search for this pill, or at least its recipe or something similar. There were many disgusting things among the undead's belongings, but unfortunately, nothing that Chinfeng needed. Then he began to extract it from the undead's body, and he received the talent of Mind Enhancement, which was predictable. He also gained 3 points of strength and 3 points of agility. Using the Mind Enhancement talent enabled him to create the Divine Seal skill. The skill creation was successful, and Chin obtained the 3rd rank skill of Beast Taming. Next, Chinfeng gathered the plants that had initially interested him: Dragon's Blood Fruit, Bone Tree Grass, and Heart Grass. The storage ring he had obtained earlier was useful for storing everything. It was a pity that there were no taming pills yet. For now, he couldn't directly control wild beasts. For now, he could only control objects and plants, thanks to his mind control ability. From Liu Yongchan, who was lying here, he also extracted the excellent skill of fire control. And from another guy lying here, he extracted increased speed. Finally, Chinfeng got an attack talent. With a little practice, he could even attack with fire from a distance. The chat channel became very lively. Everyone was discussing leveling up. It seemed that under the pressure of the god in the village of newbies, a competition had begun. After reading the news, Chinfeng decided to first recover some strength in this safe place, and then continue hunting. After dinner, his strength was restored, and a general notification arrived. It said that Chinfeng was the first to discover a trick. If you cook and eat meat, your endurance increases. In addition, a trade channel was activated. Chinfeng tried to sell the cooked meat that everyone was looking for because not everyone had fire and the ability to cook. He exchanged every 3 kilograms of cooked meat for the body of a wild beast. He received a prestige point for being the first to put the goods up for sale. The newcomer Lu Xuan immediately offered a deal. He had a dead saber-toothed mountain tiger. As a result of the first deal, both received a prestige point. Now Chinfeng was extremely pleased. Now he didn't even need to hunt. Everything he needed was exchanged for cooked meat. Then a message came from Liu Yuan, who was higher than Chinfeng in the rankings. He asked him for 6 kilograms of meat on credit. Chinfeng refused. But there was someone even greedier than Chinfeng. One person was selling 50 kilograms of cooked meat in exchange for first-rank equipment. Surprised, Chinfeng decided to try selling other things. He exchanged a first-rank beginner's weapon for 3 spiritual plants, 1 spiritual fruit, or other first-rank equipment. People wondered where Chinfeng got so much stuff, but they gladly traded their items. That's how he got the power bracelet. Urgent notification. Newbie village number 137 has placed a bet on village number 911. The bet on resources has been activated. The losing side's resources will be halved, and each member will lose 20 attribute points. The winning side will double everything and receive 20 attribute points. The village in which someone reaches level 5 first will win. The first to do so will win the bet and receive an additional 50 attribute points and 1 silver chest. The chat channels of both villages were merged. Everyone wondered who from village 911 could lead the people to victory. Perhaps it would be Lu Xuan, who was first in the rankings, or Baron Edward. This Baron was from village 134 and was already at level 4. He was the one who started this bet, confident that he would win by nightfall. The Baron was a vampire from the Blood Tribe. This is how Chinfong realized that there were other races. If you think about it, everyone in village 911 of the Blue Dragon Star country means that Tiandao intentionally gathered residents of the same countries in each village. But why? The competition began. The cards of all creatures from the 1st to the 10th level were revealed. The stakes between the villages of newcomers were high. Chin wanted to win. He needed to start destroying monsters in the higher level hunting zones if he wanted to win. Luckily, Chinfong had improved his vision and could see in the dark. His heightened sense of smell also allowed him to eliminate beasts hiding in the darkness. After the bet began, Tiandao rewarded everyone with a map showing the locations of the most active beasts. Thus, Chin reached the hunting zone of level 4 beasts. He immediately got down to business. Several had already been destroyed. A golden-eyed half-tiger suddenly jumped out. It was a 5th level beast with 8 stars of combat power. His heightened sense of smell didn't work as it should have because Chinfong wasn't ready, but luckily he managed to defeat it. For the first time, Chinfong encountered a beast that was half human. What would happen next? A familiar scent lured Chinfong forward. Somewhere nearby was grass or fruit of the spiritual realm. Further on was the zone of 6th level beasts. The danger was increasing. In the next clearing, Chinfong saw a dragon fruit and a fierce bear king guarding it. He understood this thanks to his true vision skill. A 6th level beast with a 60% chance of reward. It would be difficult to fight him, not to mention that he was a king. The beast resembled a huge bear with 3 heads. Chin attacked, but the king was very fast and knocked him aside. The king said he didn't want to waste his time and that if Chinfeng left now, he would be spared. All 3 heads spoke at once, but Chinfeng did not listen to the advice. He rushed at the bear. The sword flashed, and after a couple of minutes of fighting, the king lost one of his 3 heads. A notification came that the beast had fallen into a rage. This effect could last up to 10 minutes. The king was seriously angered. In his rage, the king's defenses increased, and now Chinfong couldn't even scratch him. The king roared and cursed Chinfong, threatening him. The Blood Wolf's battle sword was imbued with the power of flame, and its fire damage increased by 10 points. The enhanced battle sword finally broke through the king's defenses. The battle was not easy, but Chinfong emerged victorious. Turning around, Chinfong wondered why Tiandao had not announced his victory yet. As it turned out, the king was still alive. But this blow was truly devastating. Chin received 500 energy points and 2 prestige points for the king. A bronze chest with treasures appeared. Inside the chest was a 2nd level item, the battle armor of the Bear King. It provided 25 defense, 100% fire resistance, and 100% cold resistance. From endless extraction, Chin gained the blood evolution talent. The blood evolution talent can be combined with the blood of gods or demons to make awakening easier. Suddenly, Chinfong felt ill. Something was wrong. Someone spoke to him. They said he was too weak. The dragon grabbed Chinfong. He thought it was a hallucination caused by the dragon's blood fruit. He bit the dragon's paw. The dragon screamed that it was real and could teach Chinfong the secrets of dragons. Then Chin woke up. His blood had been strengthened, and he gained 5 points of strength, agility, and endurance. A notification said that with the help of the dragon blood fruit, 1/100th of Chin's blood had evolved into dragon blood. It seemed that the people of his country were descendants of dragons, which is why Chinfong was able to obtain some of the blood of a true dragon. He did not notice that he was being watched. Just as Chin was about to check on the progress of the others, he realized that someone was nearby. A beast. The Lord was already halfway to the 5th level when everyone received a message that Chinfong was the first to reach the 5th level, and that Village 911 was winning the resource challenge. No one from either village understood how this was even possible, but everyone from Chinfeng's village was happy and thanked him. It was this beast that had been following Chinfeng and helped him reach the 5th level and get points in a silver chest as a reward. Chinfeng received another message. It was personal. The guy offered to trade his resource bet token for a weapon. Chin agreed. The token appeared once in each village of newcomers. After use, if the village won, the reward received by the token's owner increased several times, but if they lost, the punishment also increased. Chin was quite famous in his village now, and everyone was waiting for his next bet. Chin said he would do it in the morning when everyone had rested a little. He went on his way looking for a place with level 10 beasts, but it was empty and too quiet here. Even with his keen sense of smell, Chinfeng couldn't smell a single beast here. Suddenly, Chin began to fall into a pit that appeared out of nowhere under his feet. Using his skill, Chinfeng stopped his fall and saw a city ahead of him, but he was in the forest. He sensed the presence of a very powerful beast somewhere nearby. Chin had never experienced anything like this before, but there was no one there. Chinfeng moved forward. The place was very strange. It looked like an abandoned village of newcomers. Suddenly, Chinfeng saw strange creatures in front of him. They had dog heads. One of them said that they were soldiers guarding this place and that anyone who came here would meet only death. Then the creatures ordered Chinfeng to prepare himself. With his true vision, he recognized them as Hell Soldiers. The creature's level was above 15. Chinfeng froze. These creatures were above level 15. Did he even have a chance? There was no way he could escape. Chin also hoped that the 4th level weapon he had obtained from the silver chest would help him. The battle began. The soldiers sent only one soldier to fight Chinfong because they looked down on him. During the battle, Qin used all of his acquired talents at once. He wanted to show these warriors what he was capable of. At one point, the soldier even admitted that Chinfong had some skills, and everyone noticed this. But it was time to end it. The hunt for the hellish soldier was over. A fragment of the secret seal was obtained. The soldiers began to argue among themselves about who would go next, and no one wanted to. A commotion began. For destroying Qin, he received 10 justice points and 2 prestige points. The endless extraction was also successful. The talent dark manipulation was obtained, and the awakening of the hellish flame talent skill worked. Chinfong rose to the rank of second-level judge. And then, behind Chinfong, the same hellish soldier appeared. Qin was shocked. He had received notification of his death. As it turned out, the name Hell Soldiers was not given in vain. They were impossible to destroy. But Chinfong was very annoyed by the self-confidence of these dogs, and he rushed into the attack again. But suddenly dawn began to break, and it was time for the soldiers to leave. They could not tolerate daylight. Finally, the soldier who had been fighting Chinfong said he hoped they would meet again. The Lost Village connects hundreds of thousands of villages of newcomers. It appears in the darkness of night and disappears at dawn. It became clear that as long as the Dark Seal existed, everyone had a chance to enter it. To enter this village, the Lost Village disappeared and the usual monsters returned. For example, a level 12 sand centipede that had already targeted Chinfong. While Jin was fighting the centipedes, a message appeared saying that 2 level 5 players had appeared in the village, and that a regional chat room would be open. Every 1,000 villages belonged to one region. The village of newbies, number 911, became the 47th connected village. Immediately after connecting, village number 477 forcibly joined Chinfeng's village in the resource bet. Now he had to reach level 8. Without hesitation, Qin racked up points like a meteor and very quickly reached the 8th level, naturally coming in first. In fact, during the bet, he only had 1 monster left to destroy before reaching the 8th level. But the rival village didn't know this, and they didn't understand how it happened that they lost almost immediately after the bet was announced. The lord of the rival village, Amir Khan, was furious at losing to the people from the land of dragons, and he wanted revenge. Lord Khan turned to the regional channel to seek help from allies who also hated the people of the dragon country. People began to guess that Chinfong was so strong because he must have an S-rank talent. Moreover, Qin became the first to use a mission token. The mission was to break the seal of the 5 elements. You must collect the 5 bases of the kings of gold, earth, water, fire, and sand. Go to the dragon slope, find the altar of the 5 elements, and break the seal of the village of newcomers 911. After the seal was broken, the village of newcomers number 911 would be able to enter a more open world. After completing the mission, every village of newcomers in area number 1 would be able to enter the big world. The recommendation said that to start with, you should head to the center of the abandoned meadow, defeat the ferocious mammoth, and obtain the foundation of the Sand King. It was recommended to go in a group. She couldn't move, but she was trembling. She needed to calm down somehow. Chinfong really hoped he could get a water or ice-type talent because it was very hot. The girl was hiding because she was being hunted by a huge beast, an elephant with an axe. The berserk mammoth found her hiding place after all, and it seemed that now it was the end. Help came unexpectedly. It was the famous Chinfong himself who everyone was talking about. The whole group of girls was captured, and she was left alone. She accidentally ended up in the area of level 10 beasts. Leia Yu and the others were captured by these mammoths, who said they would eat them today. They had to be saved. They were tied to a pole. There was dancing and singing all around. There were even mermaids. They danced in front of a crowd of berserk mammoths. A large bonfire was lit nearby. On their way there, Liu Yan and Qin had already destroyed a couple of mammoths, and Qin took a protective ring from one of them and gave it to Liu Yan. The bleeding effect of the snake's poisonous gland was an excellent weapon against the mammoth. The hellish flames also easily penetrated the berserk mammoth's defenses. While Chinfong was fighting, the mammoths noticed that several of their tribesmen were missing and rushed to their defense. But Qin knew they were coming and had set traps in advance, into which the mammoths now fell. Thanks to the mammoths, Chinfong earned a huge number of points. He noticed that one of the chiefs had the ability to regenerate and wanted to obtain it at any cost. He was curious to know if there was a limit to this ability, but this mammoth turned out to be very strong. Finally, the fierce mammoth's strength and speed began to decline. Small wounds healed very quickly. Chinfong's only chance was to deliver a fatal blow. But defeating this mammoth proved to be very difficult. It was unlike the others. Fortunately, the mammoth was indeed tired and needed more time to recover, which Chinfong took advantage of. For the mammoth, Qin received 1,700 points and 2 prestige points. The king of the mammoths immediately sensed that his loyal guardian had been destroyed. Chinfong's mood immediately worsened, and Liu Yan noticed it. She didn't know that he couldn't extract anything from the mammoth's body, the regenerative power he wanted so badly. Then it dawned on Chinfong that if he couldn't extract it, he had to find its king. Only Liu Yan didn't understand what he was talking about. After surveying the mammoth village from their hiding place, Liu Yan reported that there were more than 30 mammoths. Although Qin was strong, it was still very dangerous. Liu Yan herself hoped to quickly rescue her companions and escape, but she didn't take into account that the fire had already been lit and her group was being led to the site. Of course, they could have tried to save the others by quietly killing the couple who were leading them, but Chinfong feared that it might be a trap. Ordering Liu Yan to stay in hiding, Chinfong set off for the mammoth village. She really didn't want to let him go. But since these beasts had gone to such lengths, even setting up an ambush as it seemed to Qin, he simply had to go. The mammoth king sat on his throne and watched as Chinfong approached him. There were 37 ferocious mammoths and 3 mammoth guards around him, plus the mammoth king himself. The mammoths feared Qin. but their king said he respected him and invited him to join them and become one of them, as a guard, because he believed that Chinfong would be more useful than those who had died so easily. Then Chin asked the king what he knew about the other world. The king said that it did not exist and that the world ended here in the meadow. The king knew nothing about the other world and was stuck in his own, which greatly disappointed Chinfong. He considered the king of the mammoths to be much smarter. Of course, Chin refused to join the mammoths and drew his sword. He challenged the king to a duel. Amir Khan contacted Mr. Miyamoto directly to talk about Chinfong, who was gaining levels incredibly quickly. In the future, the inhabitants of the country of R might face difficulties because of this. This is already the 5th person who has contacted Miyamoto via direct call. And Miyamoto made his decision. He would place a bet. In the village of newcomers number 5, a bet was started, and village 911 was forcibly joined. The bet was for resources. The winner would be one of the top-ranked players from both teams. Meanwhile, Chinfong was actively fighting the mammoths. Their attacks were very strong and wounded Chinfong. However, the mammoths appreciated Chinfong's skills and offered him a chance to reconsider, giving him one last chance to join them. Fortunately, Chinfong had a backup plan. He told the king that he would only join if he became king in his place. This offer enraged the Mammoth King even more. He lunged at Chinfong. One of the Mammoth King's talents was quicksand. Chin began to sink into it. This talent was annoying. Chin almost got stuck, but he used his talent in time and the sand hardened. Neither fire nor stone spikes could harm the Mammoth King. He was not even scratched. Chinfong's next move was Hellfire, and it hurt the target as indicated in the reminder. Finally, Chinfong was able to break through the Mammoth's defense. His regeneration speed was much slower than that of the guard. Either that was the effect of the hellish flame. But the Mammoth King was skilled at manipulating sand, forming it into various shapes to attack Chinfong. Liu Yan didn't know how to help him. Suddenly, Liu Yan remembered how Chin had told her about spiritual fruits that help restore all characteristics. That was what he needed. Then Liu Yan wrote in the general chat that she was with Chinfong and he really needed help. She asked them to send spiritual plants or fruits. The villagers believed Liu Yan and sent everything they had to help because they greatly valued Chinfong as someone who could help them win any dispute or bet. After fortifying himself with spiritual fruits and plants, Chin restored all his characteristics to their maximum. Once again, he was full of strength and determination to defeat the mammoth. With the help of powerful hellfire, Chinfong made a hole in the place where the mammoth's heart was, and he obtained the core of the Earth Element King. The resources of the village of 911 multiplied. The mammoths were shocked and wanted to avenge their king. There were even more of them than before. They all gathered together, even the female mammoths. After quickly distributing the attribute points, Chinfong killed several more mammoths and reached level 9. He continued his massacre of the ferocious beasts. For each one, Chin received 610 points. And for the second guard, he also received 1,700 points. He received a bronze treasure chest. The mammoth shaman was controlling the herd and getting in the way. He had to be dealt with first. But the mammoth shaman blocked the blow with his comrade. So he also had the talent to control beasts. But there were few defenders left, and the shaman tried to escape. He promised to return with an army of mammoths. The rescued group presented Chinfong with fruits and plants, as they had nothing else of value, but they were very grateful. Among the fruits was one useless item, a level 0 squeaking chick. Its special feature was that it was very noisy. Taking the items and advising them to leave, Chinfong went on his way. Liu Yan watched him leave, spellbound. She hoped they would see each other again. All that remained was to figure out what to do with the two mermaid-like Nagas, but they swore that they were just dancers and had never harmed anyone. They begged to be let go. Promising to let them go, Chinfong asked them to answer some questions. They did so and left safely. After studying the chat, Chinfong realized that participants from other villages were spreading slander about him, claiming that he was cheating. They were upset that they had lost. Deciding to settle the score with them personally, Chinfong took out his betting token and used it. The bet could be made individually or as a team. That is, you could choose multiple targets as the enemy camp, or invite another village to join your alliance. This was Chinfong's chance to take revenge on everyone for slandering him, and he chose a team bet. Chinfong added 546 and 21 to the enemy village's camp, and in the camp of allied villages he placed 911, 34, and 77. The winner was determined by whichever camp scored 1,000 points first, but Beast could only be defeated alone, not in teams. The resources of the losers were now reduced by 70%, and 50 points were deducted from their characteristics. For the winners, everything was doubled. Chinfong's allies rejoiced. They were sure that he would not let them down. But then the enemy camps grew in number. Now 3 villages were against 24. The people were stunned. Mr. Miyamoto was confident of victory this time. After all, 3 villages against 24 was ridiculous. The battle was officially set to begin in 10 minutes. Chin opened all his chests. In addition to his fancy equipment, Chin received a 4th rank item, a liquid of spiritual fire. His combat power increased exponentially. It was time to challenge the next Beast King. He already had the King's core sand. Next was the Ant Queen. It was advised to take a team of 10 people above level 10. The Ant Queen must be extremely strong. There were 5 minutes left. He had to prepare as much as possible, and he had to start with poison. When Chin saw the hemp seeds on the naked man, he came up with a plan. He extracted the poisonous element from them. Chinfong extracted as much as he could. Now he had to try mixing the snake venom with this ricin to get something more interesting, and he got an unknown poisonous substance. He needed to test it on someone. A ferocious level 10 beast passing by approached. The poison killed the beast instantly. Just 1 drop. Chin felt like a genius. First, he needed to prepare more, then go to the anthill and destroy everyone there. On the way, Chinfong collected some iron ore. He didn't know why, but it might come in handy sooner or later. And there they were. Ants. Metal-eating worker ants. The first ones Chin had encountered. Although these ants were very strong, Chin dealt with them fairly quickly. But there was a problem. To defeat an ant, you had to pierce its brain, otherwise its body would continue to fight no matter what. And there were too many of these ants everywhere. If this continued, even Chinfong would not be able to handle them with his strength alone. He had to come up with a way to gather them all in one place. Standing on top of the hill, Chinfong began to shout, calling them. The screeching of the ants was very unpleasant. When enough ants had gathered at the foot of the hill, Chin threw poison at them. The ants began to fall one after another, showing no signs of life. It worked. Behind these ants, a new one appeared. A metal-eating ant commander. It was much larger than the others. If the poison doesn't get in its eyes, it will be useless. It seems better to use it right now. These ants weren't stupid. They scattered to avoid the attack. But luckily, at such a close range, it was difficult to miss anyway. Then huge rocks started flying at Chinfong. That was to be expected from fierce, high-level beasts. The leader even ordered the other ants to close their eyes so they wouldn't get poisoned, and he made it harder for Chinfong to defend himself by coordinating their movements. The rocks flew continuously at Chinfong from different directions, distracting him greatly. Since long-range attacks were no longer effective, it was time to put his equipment to use and continue the fight. Chin took out his sword. Thinking about this, Chinfong didn't notice an ant clinging to his leg. As it turned out, the ants with stones were just distracting him to set up an ambush, but Chin had a mammoth belt, mammoth king armor, magical crystal protection, and various healing skills, so the ants had little chance of hurting him. But the ants kept coming. Their stream was simply endless. Chin began to get nervous. The Hellfire talent helped Chinfong solve this problem as quickly as possible. Among the notifications about the points he had earned, one slipped through, saying that the cursed poisonous dragon Dio Balsazes had been spotted. Chin didn't notice. There was commotion at the entrance to the nest, but the ant queen still hadn't come out. Then another ant suddenly appeared and was destroyed with a single movement of Chinfong's hand. Chinfong already had 800 personal points, and the village had a total of 867. There were only a few hundred left to reach 1,000. The air was humid and smelled like chocolate. Chin had read somewhere that ants release an alarm pheromone when they sense danger. Going deeper into the cave, Chin realized that they had prepared for his arrival. The ants were gathering their eggs and stacking them. New ones were already hatching. No wonder the ant queen was ranked 4th among the 5 great animal kings. With her ability to reproduce and her great army of ants, even the king of mammoths would not dare to fight her. Her special abilities were telekinesis and metal bending. The queen noticed Chinfong and ordered an attack. Moreover, she used the location of minerals and covered all the ants with black metal armor. In front of the cave, Chin had already dealt with 100 of them, so now it was no problem for him. The queen was shocked. After eliminating all the defenders, Chin moved toward the queen. She spat corrosive ant acid at him, and he was unable to dodge it. Even Chinfong's strongest defense succumbed to corrosion. This was the queen ant's trump card. Before the next spit, Chin prepared himself, and the acid collided with hellish flames. Chin broke through to the queen and struck her with his sword. The attack was successful and the queen was defeated. 6,000 experience points and 4 prestige points were earned. The mission item, the king's core, was also obtained. In addition, a silver chest was obtained. Chinfong was very pleased. The rival village alliance had only about 600 points. Lord Miyamoto was confident of victory because they had 24 villages on their side. Miyamoto laughed until a notification arrived that the Red Camp had been the first to reach 1,000 points. The stats of each loser were halved, and their resources were reduced by 70%. A notification also arrived stating that if the sum of 4 attributes was less than 10, people would become crippled. Those who went into the red in terms of points died. Now everyone blamed Miyamoto for provoking Chinfong. Only newly hatched ants were swarming around Chinfong, but he paid no attention to them. They were too weak. He was waiting for his reward. His reputation reached 30 points, and he received the title of King of Newbies, plus 20 points to each attribute. He received 6 silver chests and many bonus points. And for reaching the 10th level first, Chin received a golden chest. A mission called Future Village Chief also appeared. The reward for the mission was a Village Chief scroll and a gold chest. A D-rank mission was activated. You need to go to the 10th level zone, the Graveyard Desert, find the Lost Village, solve its mystery, and destroy the devil. The reminder stated that the Lost Village is located in the desert, and you need to collect a fragment of the Dark Seal. Becoming the village chief is only the beginning of its development. Without a leader, the village will be disbanded, and the residents will become refugees and lose the protection of the newcomer's wooden house. The village of newcomers can develop and grow. The village chief can lead the inhabitants to build an entire city, kingdom, or empire. It was fortunate that Chinfong had the key to the Lost Village, and all he had to do was wait for nightfall. After distributing all the points, Chinfong felt incredible power. He took the ability to control metal from the Ant Queen, and can now create dark metal armor on his body. Chinfong also had an innate talent for releasing energy. He directs energy from his body to attack enemies. Then it was time to open the chests. A message popped up saying that the second-ranked player in their village, Lu Xuan, was requesting a private conversation with Chinfong. Through a video call, Chin learned that Lu Xuan had something he wanted to trade. It was a chest combination card, and in exchange, he wanted a bloody wolf battle sword. The chest combination card could be used to combine 5 low-level chests into a higher-level chest. The card worked on chests made of dark gold and lower. It was unlikely that anyone else had that many chests, but Chinfong did, and he understood the value of the card. Therefore, he gladly exchanged it. Now he could start opening them. Chin received the Boots of the Wind God, which increased all characteristics, and the Necklace of Shadow Illusion, which could use dark energy to create a shadow clone. This clone could fight for its wearer, but only had half of their strength. Chinfeng still had 8 silver chests left. He needed another card, so he posted a message at 1 o'clock with offers to trade. Night was fast approaching. Chinfeng was ready to face the hellish soldiers. He had become even stronger since their last encounter. The stunned soldiers were destroyed almost immediately. Chin had found their weakness. They were not all powerful. The main thing was to finish off their heads. For destroying the soldiers, Chin received another fragment of the Seal of Darkness. Now he had to collect 7 dark crystals, remove the seal from the demonic altar, release the demon, and destroy it. The first 10 people from the Blue Star world to complete the mission would receive a reward. Chin was the 7th person to activate this mission. 6 more people received the mission. It seemed that there were many hidden rankers in his world, and he had to hurry or he might not make it into the top 10. And then Chin hurried to the Lost Village. There was no time to think. Since Village 911 had won the resource bet many times, the mission became more difficult. The combat strength of the tasks was increased, as was the reward for completing them. As soon as Chinfeng entered the village, he was immediately attacked from behind by a fat man. It was Kiki, the king of the 10th level newbies. This guy was trying to eliminate a rival, just like many others before Chinfeng. But he didn't know that level meant nothing without strength. Chin quickly dealt with him. Keiki was a follower of the sealed demon. For this, Chin received 7,000 experience points, 100 justice points, and advanced to the 11th level, for which he received a dark crystal. Following the fat guy came another one, a more experienced fighter. As it turned out, the first one was the weakest here. This newcomer, although strong, was only at the 11th level, but that was not all. He had a hidden skill. When Chin touched him, he began to freeze. The guy turned everything he touched into ice. To repay Chinfeng, the newcomer was going to tear him to pieces while he was frozen in ice. But Chin also had skills. With a single glance, he controlled the elements, and the second newcomer was also destroyed. A demon's roar swept through the village, and the purple mist became even denser than before. The demon's followers surrounded Chinfeng. He knew he had to collect 7 dark crystals. Accordingly, there were 5 followers. One girl was so inconspicuous behind Chinfeng that he didn't even notice her. Suddenly, Chinfeng's head spun, and he no longer understood what was happening or where he was. He found himself in a strange place. Butterflies were flying everywhere and flowers were blooming. And the girl from the village, one of the demon's followers, was also there. She was spinning and dancing above him. But in reality, it was hypnosis. The newcomers believed that Chin Feng's weak point was his mind. One of them, Baizhe, was a friend of Bin Chen, whom Chin had destroyed. While the lady was distracting the newcomers, they decided that there would be no better opportunity and attacked altogether. But something went wrong with their plan. Chin was not as weak as they had expected. He snapped out of his trance and began to fight back. The first was destroyed, then the second. As it turned out, Chin was just distracting his opponents, letting them believe that he had fallen for the hypnosis. The newbies were shocked. It was the first time a human had fooled them like that. Even the illusion didn't work. The remaining 3 rushed into a new attack. The girl was the most difficult to deal with. She not only knew how to create illusions, but she could also become them. Turning into petals, she flew around Chin Feng and blocked his view. Chin tried to jump out, but it turned out that in addition to illusions, the girl also possessed earth magic, and Chin fell. She was the last of the 7 to survive, but she was also the strongest. She was intrigued by Chin and his abilities. Before destroying Chinfong, the girl wanted to take revenge for his deception and trap. His opponent beat him against rocks, spun him around, tortured him, and thoroughly enjoyed watching what was happening. Chin could not move his arms or legs. His only chance to attack was to destroy the crystal armor. Then there would be space between his body and the ivy. Having done this, Chin unleashed his hellfire skill toward the novice. The demon's minion was stunned. She was curious where a person with only level 11 had acquired so many skills. After she was destroyed, it turned out that she was a king-level spirit. Chin gained 10,000 experience points and 140 justice points, and some strange stone. The spirits began to behave more and more actively. Apparently, it was all because of the altar near which Chin Feng was standing. Then he placed 7 dark crystals in the recesses around the edges of the altar. The seal was removed, and the spirit began to be released. It was soon complete. This monster was terrifying. Chin Feng could not even imagine a creature of such rank and power. It was a demon of hatred. And the demon was enraged that Chin had destroyed all his followers, everything he had worked so hard for over the years. One blow and Chin Feng could no longer feel his arm. The power of the demon of hatred was terrifyingly great. Its claws tried to grab Chin Feng, and it was only luck that the rods he had summoned from the ground slightly restrained the demon's power. Neither the wind seal blade nor the rods could pierce the demon's defense. Neither could the 3rd rank Hellfire. Then Chin tried his energy release skill, but this technique also failed against the demon. There was something Chin Feng had missed. It couldn't be that this demon had no weak points. Chin attacked again, this time more successfully. The movable joints of the bones were quite difficult to protect and became the demon's weak point, but this only enraged the demon even more, and it struck so hard that Chin Feng was left with not a single bone intact. Fortunately, he managed to take the talent of the girl in white. Her 2nd order healing skill automatically triggered the 3rd rank regeneration process. The wounds closed in a matter of seconds. The next idea was to try to wear down the demon and then destroy it. A new message stated that the newcomer from Village 74 had destroyed the Demon of Hatred and taken 1st place on the Blue Star. One of the 10 had already completed the mission. They had to hurry. The battle resumed. Chinfong created a ghostly clone. Although it only had half the strength, it was very helpful in distracting the demon. Meanwhile, a second newcomer had destroyed the demon and taken second place on the Blue Dragon Star. And behind him was the third. Hellfire, energy release, rods, and poison. Such powerful techniques, and not a single one broke the demon's armor. Another participant won. 6 places remained. And when the residents of Village 911 began to worry about Chinfong, he managed to defeat the demon and became the 5th winner. After creating the village, the initial characteristics increased by 200%. 400 experience points, 2 golden chests, and the heart of a demon of hatred were also obtained. Next came a message that the testing of the newcomers was far from over. A real nightmare awaited them. The protective barrier was destroyed, and divine punishment rained down on the village. The villagers were already preparing to defend themselves against the angel. Even the combined strength of hundreds of people was no match for this creature. As the village chief, he was unable to protect it. He was the only one who lost. He felt terrible. He hated everything and everyone around him. His hatred was all-consuming, so much so that the demon managed to get into his thoughts and into his very soul. That's how it all began. This is what Chinfong learned. After the elder's death, he became a hostage of the dark deity and turned into a demon of hatred. This deserted village was the territory that had been under his control. That is why heavenly punishment is the final test that the village of newcomers must undergo. A general announcement stated that village number 74 had been established and changed its name to Polar Night. The residents of village 911 were curious when Chinfong would establish the village. People began to call and write to him. Chinfong asked the residents for advice on the name of the village. The name Dragon Whirlpool best reflected the essence of the village, and everyone liked it. It was time to move on to the foundation. The village was created. Everyone received 80 points, and the village head received 400. A one-click teleportation function to the hut became available. This could even save lives in difficult situations. There was also a reverse function to return to the teleportation point. The villagers decided to throw a big party in the square. They hoped that Chinfong would join them too. The village head activated the public video broadcast function. He announced that after the newcomer's trial was over, the village would have to face a heavenly punisher with the fighting power of 100 stars. His main task was to destroy the newcomer's huts. As soon as this happened, the person would automatically become homeless and have 100 points deducted from their score. Everyone understood that things were not looking so rosy now. Not everyone would have a place to teleport to after this trial. There were 4 days left before the trial, and Chinfong asked everyone to reach level 10 as quickly as possible in order to pass the trial with dignity. In addition, as the village improved, it was possible to obtain the right to build a guardian altar. To advance to the first level, 5 conditions had to be met. The first was to have a population of more than 500 people. The second was for the village head to obtain the title of Beginning Emperor. The third was for the village head's hut to be upgraded to the second level. Fourth, there must be at least 100 first-rank huts. And fifth, there must be at least 10 players with level 10. If Chinfong takes care of the second and third conditions, the residents must fulfill the remaining 2 and work hard to achieve them. To upgrade the huts, stone, wood, and fur were needed. The residents divided into groups and set out to search for them. Chinfong already knew where to get the materials. After all, he had come to a place that was already prepared. He looked back at the destroyed buildings behind him. After teleporting everything he needed, Chinfong upgraded the village head's hut to level 1. The residents were shocked. Less than 5 minutes had passed since the broadcast ended. The number of new villages reached 100, and from that moment on, the competition to improve them began. In the village of Polar Night, the vampire Marquis John Brass reported to Prince Dracula on the state of affairs. All 914 residents of this village had already become members of their clan. Their next goal was to become one of the top 3 villages. After all, these villages would receive good bonuses. The vampires turned the villagers into their own kind and made them slaves, forcing them to work for the betterment of the village. The improvement of Dragon's Whirlpool village was in full swing. Chinfong was in charge of construction. To upgrade the village to the first level, the village head's hut had to be upgraded to the second level. To do this, Chinfong was missing just 1 first-level ice stone. To do this, Chinfong went to the sea to get a turtle that could be used to obtain the stone. One of Chinfong's acquired talents was the spirit of water. Thanks to his gills, he could breathe underwater. After searching for an hour, Chin still couldn't find what he needed. The body of water was very large, and then Chin finally saw the turtle. It led him to its fellow turtles. Defeating the turtles also proved to be no easy task. They were not stupid. They had battle tactics and worked together. Chin was not even sure of victory. With great difficulty, Chin managed to escape the turtles' attacks. Underwater, his attacks were less effective, and he couldn't use hellfire at all. Things were looking bad. Chin was exhausted and didn't know what to do next. What tactic should he use? If there was no way to lure them ashore, he would have to deal with the leader first. Creating a shadow clone should distract them. And that's exactly what happened. The entire turtle army rushed after the clone. But the clone was quickly destroyed, and the leader of the turtles turned his attention to the real Chinfong. With the help of shadow chains, Chinfong managed to restrain the monster and destroy it. The royal core was obtained. Moreover, Chinfong reached the 12th level. It was time to reap the rewards. He obtained the talents of ice and water control and awakened the skill of Ice Storm. These were the ice arrows that the turtle leader had fired. The man from 1,000 worlds whom the girl had been watching through the screen had already obtained his 3rd core. She wished she could start a romance with him. Her friend rebuked her, saying that the people of Little Heliocosma were weak and talentless. Even if he reached the rank of prefect, he would not be able to survive the great battle of worlds, let alone meet this girl. The resources of his village had increased significantly, which meant that the difficulty had increased proportionally. In this situation, it would be quite difficult to complete the task. After all, the hardest part is not obtaining the cores, but the battle on the dragon's slope. Looking at the village rankings, Qin was surprised. Liu Yuan usually lagged behind Liu Xuan. Half an hour passed, and everything changed. What did they do to raise their levels so much? It turned out that the guys were being cunning and selling weapons to newbies in exchange for contribution points. Flying over the forest, Qin noticed a group of people trying to rob a girl. They were all residents of his village. Qin would not tolerate this. They were not worthy of life. After freeing the girl, Chinfong ordered her to return to the village and continued on his way on his falcon. His talent for taming animals worked perfectly. Once the village's level increased, he would need to learn more about the village head's powers. Activating his true eye, Chinfong found a demonic plant. Rafflesia, the man-eater? These seemingly harmless flowers knew how to defend themselves. They screamed. They bit and were very poisonous, among other things. They could even recover from sword blows. But this was only a level 15 plant, and in the end, Chinfeng managed to defeat them with some effort. He obtained another Aoki core. Standing among the dead flowers, Qin noticed something and saw a bloodthirsty, poisonous bee through his true eye. New monsters. They were nesting in the trees. It was time to test his new skills. 4th level skill, Ice Storm. Arrows pierced the bees, adding points to Chinfeng's score. 3,000 bees fell instantly. Nothing less was expected from a 4th level skill. Next was the Demon Tree Witch who lived here. Defeating her was not much more difficult than dealing with all those who came before her. When the witch realized that Chinfeng was stronger than her, she begged for mercy. She said she would give up the core willingly. In reality, she was looking for an opportunity to launch a surprise attack and was feigning remorse. To lull Chinfeng into a false sense of security, the witch presented him with a 5th rank Fire Phoenix egg as a gift. By raising this egg, one could obtain an irreplaceable assistant with incredible power. Fortunately, Qin was not stupid and had encountered such cunning before. Hellfire destroyed all the enemies around him. For defeating the witch, Qin received 1,000 points, 4 reputation points, and a silver chest. A combat pet should hatch from the egg. Legend has it that it is a descendant of the sacred beast, the guardian spirit of the south. Its potential is incredible, and its power is beyond comprehension. Chinfeng's 5th round pet hatched. It was a cute phoenix chick. But as soon as Chinfeng touched it, the chick flew into the sky, becoming a large, majestic bird. The new owner was simply delighted with such a gift. This bird would be an excellent helper in the fight against the Punisher, especially if it was strengthened. Qian named his phoenix Xiaoluan. From that moment on, it was a combat pet born of Chinfeng's spirit and blood. His loyalty was unmatched in this world. The skill of 6 senses synergy allowed Chinfeng to understand what the little one was saying, and the first thing Xiaolu said was that he was hungry. All that remained was to figure out what to feed him. Flying over a mountain of hellfire, the chick suddenly dove down and began attacking the magma fire spirits. That was what it fed on. The points for destroying the spirits were counted towards his master, Chinfeng. For each spirit, Qin received a spirit voucher. This was a 2nd rank item that could be used to gain 1 prestige point. One person could use up to 10 cards. And Chinfeng had 10 of them in a short period of time. Upon reaching a certain number of prestige points, one can obtain a title bestowed by heaven, which can be exchanged for points. There were about 300 spirits on the mountain. After clearing them all, Chinfeng would have about 100 vouchers. He would place them in the exchange channel to help the villagers improve and reach the 10th level as soon as possible. After feasting on the spirits, Chinfeng's battle pet reached the 2nd level and a combat power of 60 stars. In addition to the usual inhabitants of the mountain, there was also a king of magma fire spirits. Xiaoluo rushed at him. Leaving this to the phoenix, Qin decided to see how things were going in the dragon's abyss. Liu Xuan, Lei Jue, Qi, and several others had already reached the 10th level. 9 had already reached it. The title of Emperor of the Newbies was also obtained after the battle with the turtles. The Elder's hut was gradually improving. There were now 95 first-level huts in the village. Very soon, they would all be able to move up to the next level. Not bad at all. And then Chinfeng received an exchange offer. 3 third-level items for a 3rd-level machete. These items were 3rd rank, but due to contamination, they could be classified as 2nd rank. Qin did not understand what kind of contamination was meant. It turned out that the items were corroded, but the exchange was still very profitable and Qin gladly agreed. He immediately began endlessly extracting items from his bracelet and cuffs. He cleaned them and put them on. These were the lost items of the Messenger of Light. A notification arrived that the 10th person in the village of Dragon Whirlpool had reached level 10. 100 huts in the village had been improved. Excellent! All conditions had been met. Qin asked Xiao to hurry up. The king of the magma fire spirits was too strong. Qin used the teleportation function to return to the hut. He decided to immediately improve the village of Dragon's Whirlpool. Now it is at the 1st level. All the villagers received a blessing from the heavens and 50 points each. The village head received 100 points. Now it is permitted to upgrade the villagers' huts to level 2 and receive another 100 points. The villagers wanted to know from Chinfong what they needed to do. In the village of Polar Night, Prince Dracula was swimming in the lake when his servant finally brought him some ice stones. Now all they had to do was upgrade the residents' huts to the 1st level. Dracula thought he would be the first until news of the Dragon Whirlpool arrived. At that time, Chinfeng was planning to upgrade the village head's hut to level 3, and he had everything he needed. The new hut had a cozy kitchen, a bed, and even an excellent bathroom. While Qin was lying in the bathroom thinking about how to earn points quickly, a support service employee appeared in his personal chat and informed him that he could double all his points. To do this, he would have to double the difficulty of the challenge and then receive double the reward. Then Chinfeng would get 2,000 points and the residents would get 1. He had 10 minutes to think about it. The initial conditions for leveling up were the same. He had to build a guardian altar, and to do that he had to build a 2nd level village. But he didn't know where to get the materials. After consulting with the residents, Chinfeng decided to accept the challenge because the people believed in him completely. From now on, upon reaching each subsequent level of the Dragon Whirlpool Village, the rewards would be doubled, but the conditions for reaching the second level had also changed. The population had to be over 1,000 people. The headman's hut must be 3rd level, and the number of first-level huts must exceed 400, plus there must be 40 newcomers of the 10th level. The residents panicked. These were very difficult conditions. To begin with, there are only 937 people in the village, and 1,000 are needed. No one knew what to do next as the conditions seemed impossible at first glance. In response, Chin said that he was working on a C-rank quest to open the map, which would allow him to go out into the wider world and attract more people. In the first district, there were 17 more villages inhabited by people from the Dragon Kingdom, and there was a chance that they would want to join the Dragon Vortex. Since the tasks were quite difficult, they had to be distributed. Chinfeng opened a system for monitoring his subordinates. A lot of wood and stone were needed to upgrade the huts to the 1st and 2nd level. Everyone above level 10 would be assigned to chop wood and mine stone. For the rest, the initial task was to reach level 10 as quickly as possible. There were only 2 weeks left for the village to reach the 2nd level. They had to hurry. As for Chinfeng himself, he planned to return and defeat the Fire King, but first, he needed to improve his stats. Finally, Chinfeng had accumulated enough cards and treasure chests. The card conversion was successful. 2 gold treasure chests were obtained, followed by a white gold chest containing a 5th rank item, the Deep Night Blade. This blade added a large number of points to each attribute. It would be an excellent aid in battle. Now, Chinfeng was ready to go meet the Fire King again on the mountain. On the mountain of Hellfire, Chin discovered the Lotus of Raging Fire, and a little further away, there was a man. This man was standing on the edge of the mountain. He was an Imperial-ranked man of the 18th level. He was immune to magma and carried absolute evil. This man had destroyed the Phoenix Chick, which had turned into a lotus. The clan members punished him for this, but he killed them all. And this boy said that his name was the Fire King, and this was his true form. Chin had long understood that the worlds were divided, and that this man was from the middle world. The boy was ready to fight. He was a master of fire and everything related to it. Glass-like mutated dragons began to emerge from the volcanoes. The Fire King ordered them to attack Chinfeng. But this man clearly underestimated Chinfeng, especially since he had a new high-ranking weapon. With the help of hellish flames, Chin dealt with the glass dragons, and he obtained a new resource, fire glass. The whole situation amused the Fire King. He saw no threat in Chinfeng. The task became more difficult. The king controlled all the fire. It was becoming dangerous, and they needed to find a secluded place. But the Fire King managed to trap Chinfeng. Chin asked Xiao Luanyan to fly away while he still could and save himself, but he stayed. Then Chin tried to use shadow bonds, and now the Fire King was trapped. Now he clearly stopped underestimating Chinfeng, the emperor of newbies he had laughed at. However, Chinfeng had not yet managed to discover the Fire King's weak spot. Out of nowhere, a weapon appeared in the king's hands. He attacked Chinfeng. But Chinfeng dodged the attack and used his energy release skill in midair. A beam of energy pierced the king. But he was still alive, though not as bold as before. The Fire King said strange things about the earthly realm and tests of combat power. Chin did not understand. The battle did not stop for a second. The king continued to speak. He said that a master undergoes a serious transformation when passing to the earthly level. When combat power reaches 130 stars, a human-level master can defeat an earth-level master with 100 stars of combat power. The Fire King wanted to end this quickly and destroy Chinfeng. He ordered the fire golem to do so. A huge fire monster pounced on Chinfeng. The king himself pierced it with his sword. Chin hoped for his regeneration skill. The Phoenix Chick Xiaoluo rushed to save its master from the golem. Unfortunately, the attack was unsuccessful. Chinfeng's wound was serious and regeneration would take time. But Chin did not want to teleport, because even if he could not defeat this boy, he would definitely not be able to protect the village. He had to fight. Chin could not allow himself to lose, and although it was difficult, he got up. Even the Fire King was struck by Chinfeng's superhuman willpower, which allowed him to stand despite his wounds and pain. Enraged, Chin activated his shadow clone and shadow bonds. The king's legs were trapped. Together with his clone, Chinfeng held the king in a trap, and Chin delivered the final blow. The king was destroyed. 3,000 energy points, 9 reputation points, and 300 responsibility points were obtained. The king's core was obtained. Over 100 reputation points and 100 combat power stars were achieved. The title of Emperor of Newcomers was obtained. But the golem remained. Chin activated the Hellfire and destroyed it, gaining 990 points. Then Chinfeng received a notification that he was now qualified to take the martial arts test. The Fire King had mentioned this. Chinfeng then asked his assistant how to participate in this test. He had to go to the Temple of 1,000 Phenomena in the Big World. During the test subject's body would be transformed by the power of the Heavenly Path, and they would receive the title of Earth-Level Master. The higher the score, the better the power of transformation. In addition, the number of awards received for passing the trial also depended on the score. A notification informed that a resident of the village of Liu Xuan had upgraded his hut to the 2nd level and received the Blessing of Heaven. 100 points were awarded. It turned out that when the villagers upgraded their huts and became stronger, the village head Chin also received a reward. Being the village head turned out to be really profitable. If the strength of each of the 937 residents increases, Chin will receive 9,370 points. And if the number of villagers increases, the number of points will also increase. Then Chinfeng could become a god. Such fantasies crossed his mind. In any case, Chinfeng needed to promote the development of his residents in order to get a return as soon as possible. Therefore, he donated 500 spirit vouchers that he had earned on the fiery mountain. Chin also donated a huge amount of ice stones so that the villagers could improve their huts. After obtaining the core of the Fire King, Qin could improve his talent to rank 5, and the Hellish Flames would become dazzling 4th level Hellish Flames. And Qin allowed Xiao Luanyu to eat the Fire Lotus in the hope that it would make him stronger. 3 hours had passed since Mr. Turgenev entered the remote village. He was the second strongest resident in the district, and some believed that he was almost as powerful as Chinfeng. Qin himself was not worried yet. After all, it was not easy to pass through the village, therefore he did not suspend his energy stone deals. But if Turgenev succeeded, he would sell them very cheaply. In search of new lands to earn points, Qin set off for the Forbidden Lands and encountered their guardian. He immediately impressed the guardian by stopping a light arrow with his bare hands. The guardian did not expect a man from Little Heliocosmos to be capable of such a feat. The guardian did not have time to be surprised because Qin destroyed him with his light beam. 5,000 energy units and 100 responsibility points were obtained. Something was wrong. There was a strong smell of blood everywhere, and there was some kind of strange smoke. Ahead, Qin saw what was happening. There was a pedestal with a ritual circle inside and many people standing around it in a circle. It was a large field. The people around it were completely white, like a black and white picture, and they were kneeling. The man inside the circle was another guardian of the Forbidden Lands who greeted Chinfong. Chinfong didn't understand why he was greeting him as if they were old friends, but it was too early to attack. If these people attacked all together, Chinfong would not be able to win this battle quickly. Besides, the strength of the main enemy exceeded 100 stars. The man said that he had been watching Chinfong from the very beginning, from his fight with the rat to his battles with the kings. The strength and abilities that Chinfong has shown from the very beginning are truly impressive. He is undoubtedly the strongest warrior of the last 1,000 years. And then the guardian said that because of this, he had decided to destroy Chinfong. He immediately launched an attack, breaking away from his position in the center of the magic circle. Qin blocked the Guardian's attacks and counterattacked with blinding hellfire. It was impressive. Qin not only managed to dodge the Guardian's attacks, but also crept up on him unnoticed. When Qin split his enemy's body in two with his sword, there was no notification of his death. That meant he would rise again. And so it was. It couldn't be that simple. Over the years, the Guardian had lost some of his skills. Qin wanted to continue attacking, but the Guardian sat still and offered him friendship and the fruits of dragon's blood as a gift. However, Chinfong had no intention of selling himself for that, but he took the fruit and began to eat it. The awakening of the dragon's power began. The fruits of dragon blood can awaken blood talent. The more you eat, the greater the concentration of true dragon blood in your body. When it reaches 3%, you can awaken your hereditary skills. The Land Guardian then offered Chinfong to ask any questions he had. He asked about the martial arts trial. This was a gift from the heavenly path. Those who take part in this test can receive the highest blessing and be transformed. The results would be divided into 5 levels: low, medium, high, special, and divine. Although there were 5 levels, 99% of people would fall into the low level. Only 1/100% of people are in the middle level. And when it comes to the divine level, it is 1/1000,000,000. Then, together with the Guardian from Middle Heliocosmos, 1 billion people came, but only a few reached the high level. Even not all geniuses who received the title of Emperor managed to reach the high level during the novice evaluation stage. When it comes to the special level, it's 1 in 100 billion. Even in the big Heliocosmos, it's hard to meet someone like that. And no one has ever seen a legendary master of the divine level. Therefore, the Guardian believed that at least level 20 and combat power of 300 stars were needed to reach at least the average level. While continuing to eat fruit, Qin asked what the Great Battle of 10,000 Worlds was. According to the Guardian, the Great Battle of 10,000 Worlds is a battle that takes place every 1,000 years in the world in which they live. Everyone who wants to comes here with the goal of destroying a large, medium, or small helicosm. Monsters, ghosts, evil spirits, or even humans. All living things are forced to fight. And if you win, you can become a deity. If you lose, you will be destroyed. No one will even know that you ever existed. The heavenly path is very cruel to the losers. Cursed by the heavens themselves, they are unable to survive. The Guardian also said that if Qin could break the seal and go to the Great Heliocosmos, he might be able to meet the defeated races. Finally, Chinfeng's dragon blood concentration reached 3%, and his blood talent increased. All of his stats increased by 100 points. Now, Chinfeng might even be able to destroy the Guardian of the Land. But for some reason, Chinfeng was unable to fully awaken the blood talent within himself. Therefore, the Guardian suggested that Chinfeng put the fruits aside for the future. Gradually, they would awaken the power of the dragon's soul and awaken his hereditary talent. The only thing Qin didn't understand was why the Guardian was doing all this for him. It was clearly not for free. Then the Guardian showed Chinfeng a golden spirit that could enhance the power of weapons. The Guardian hoped that Qin would be able to release it. But why destroy the water dragon? It seemed that he was no longer willing to wait. The Guardian would no longer be able to restrain him. And Qin took the golden spirit, then he used infinite extraction on the Guardian. He obtained the skills of wind control, earth control, light control, and metal control. Control of all 5 elements. The integration of the 5 talents was successfully completed. He obtained the A-rank talent, the secret mystery of the 5 elements. Finally, Chinfeng obtained an A-rank combat talent. Thus, his strength would continue to grow faster and faster. Then Qin promised the petrified Guardian that he would avenge the dragon for all the inhabitants whose will it had suppressed, and set off to meet it. Standing on the pedestal, Qin began to open the gates. All the cores he had gathered began to reunite. Huge stones began to fall from the sky. The water dragon puppet demon arrived. The fighting power of this demon was 143 stars. He was enraged. He had been imprisoned for thousands of years and now he had broken free. Chinfeng's final task was to destroy the water dragon puppet and sacrifice it to the heavens. The dragon spewed flames and roared. Qin used the power of hellfire to defend himself from the dragon's scorching flames. In the heat of battle, Chin broke the dragon's claw, which greatly surprised the latter. After all, Chin was just an ordinary human. The water dragon puppet controlled fire. All the energy seemed to flow to him. His combat power grew before our eyes. Earth-level masters are capable of using the power of the heavens for their own purposes. That is what was meant. And now the puppet's combat power was already 200 stars. That was enough to destroy the entire planet. After creating a clone, Chin began to attack with blinding hellfire. But the puppet wasn't even alive. And how to destroy something that wasn't alive was still a question. The temperature around them was at its maximum. A wild, incredible power could be felt. Chin feared that even 4th-level hellish flames would not be able to cope with this. But in any case, there must be a countermeasure for every measure. Chin activated the secret mystery of the 5 elements. According to Chinfong, the 5-fold ice storm skill could calm the dragon puppet's flames. The ice storm and the wild, all-consuming fire collided, but the puppet was unaffected. We must try again. Chinfong ran away and let the puppet swallow him. Indeed, Chin was inside the dragon puppet. It was cold and hard, but not as hard as the scales. And while inside, Chinfong summoned an ice storm. The monster's body was completely torn apart from the inside. It fell. The water dragon puppet was destroyed. 100,000 units of primary energy, 10 reputation points, and 1,000 responsibility points were obtained. The reward was doubled and a chest of dark gold was also obtained. Chinfong had won. The village elder of Dragon Whirlpool completed the mission of sealing the 5 elements. The seal restricting the village was removed. Now the village is directly connected to the wider world. Then a bright light appeared and Chin received a message that he had obtained the essence of the dragon's soul. It entered his body. He gained the power of the dragon's soul. The dragon's soul was successfully awakened, adding many points to his characteristics. He also gained the hereditary skill of dragon greatness. It produces an incorporeal spiritual force. It scares away all living things and can suppress willpower. All of this allowed Chinfeng's combat power to reach 155 stars. Thanks to the endless extraction from the puppet's body, Chin also gained the skill True Essence of Wind. He awakened a new talent, Air Glider. He could summon wings. This was much more convenient than Chinfeng's usual boots, and he was delighted. Now it was time to deal with the chests. Xiaoluan was also delighted that he could fly with his master. The assistant reported that Chin had completed the task of opening the map. Now the village was connected to the Greater Helicosmos. As a reward, they received a map of the Greater Helicosmos. The villages of the newcomers were marked in red on the map, and the Temple of 1,000 Phenomena was marked in blue. The villages near the temple formed a district. There were at least 10,000 temples on the map in each area, with 1 million people in each, for a total of 10 billion. Now it was time to search for new residents for the village, but first, the chests. From one, Qin obtained 5th rank dragon armor, and from the second, 6th rank 3-dimensional space. When Qin put on the new armor, his combat power increased to 158 stars. The 3-dimensional space was suitable for growing spiritual plants or keeping and cultivating living beings. After sealing the agreement with the space with a drop of blood, Qin could now move objects there or move himself using the power of his mind. The capacity of this place was simply astonishing. Now there was a place to store large items, such as the dragon bones that Qin had originally intended to sell. But now he had a place for them. To reach the nearest temple, one had to traverse the Forest of Sorrow, the Chessboard Valley, and the Heavenly Lake. There were only 3 days left until the end of the competition. It was time to set off into the big world. There were 0 and 1st rank trees everywhere. There were many more materials than in Chinfeng's lands. The predatory monsters here were also different and stronger. In half an hour, Qin encountered 6 of them. Qin checked the data. 9 2nd-level huts and 8 10th-level newbies were still needed. Everyone was working incredibly fast. Not far away, Qin heard strange sounds. There were no villages nearby, so he rushed over to see who lived there. A girl was standing next to a huge blue monster. The monster was about to harm her. Qin rushed forward, grabbed the girl, and jumped away from the monster with her. Xiaoluan dealt with the level 23 electric ferret. A guy named Qi Yun appeared from the other side. He asked Chinfeng if he was the next contender. It turned out that 4 days ago, the Heavenly Path had told Qi Yun that a challenger from 1,000 worlds would soon descend and speak their language. Of course, Qin didn't understand anything, but he was the first challenger in the last 1,000 years, so the guy and the girl were puzzled. The people of Qi Yun and Qi Yue bowed before Chinfeng and called him their savior. The assistant informed the shocked Chinfeng that he had activated a mission called Rescue of the Fallen Clan. The reward was the absolute loyalty of the Qin clan. Since it was a mission, Chinfeng did not refuse. But first, he decided to deal with the bodies of the beasts. The smell of his kin's blood attracted the chief electric ferret. He gathered all the survivors and ordered them to take revenge. The fallen Qi clan had their own small settlement. When the residents saw that only Qi Yue and Qi Yun had returned, they realized that something had happened. Then Qi Yue told them about the attack by the electric ferrets. Qin teleported the bodies of the dead. This clan was from the Middle Helicosmos, which had been defeated in the Great Battle of 10,000 Worlds. Millions of survivors were scattered across the world as punishment. Without the ability to awaken their talents or receive any rewards, the highest level they could reach was 15. Over thousands of years, only 300 people remained. Elder Qi Shan thanked Chinfeng. Qi Yun reported that Qin was the next contender, and that they now called him boss. The elder asked Chinfeng to speak with him alone. When they were alone, Qi Shan said that it was actually a lie that the clan could be saved after the appearance of a contender. The newly appointed elder, upon taking office, receives a special document stating that not every contender is capable of this. The savior must be the village head with the status of emperor of the newcomers, and that is practically impossible. With a smirk, Chinfeng said that if those were all the conditions, then he fit the bill. Then with tears in his eyes, Qishan began to beg Chinfeng to help their clan. Before Qin could answer, the ground shook, and the elder shouted that enemies were approaching. It was a huge swarm of electric ferrets that had come to avenge their kin. The residents began to gather for battle and form defensive lines. Apparently, this was not the first time. But for Chinfeng, it was a great chance to score some points. He took off with Xiaoluo. Arrows from the ice storm flew into the swarm, and the ferrets died one after another very quickly. On the other side, the phoenix Xiaoluo also handled them well, just like the first time. Qin himself also attacked personally in addition to using his skills. It was excellent training. And so, the king of electric ferrets was destroyed. Points and a golden chest were obtained. From endless extraction, Qin obtained the talent True Essence of Thunder and Lightning, rank B. The 4th level skill Mad Thunderclap was awakened. The entire village was already running towards Chinfeng. They had been waiting for this for a very long time. The elder presented Chinfeng with a scroll. It was a contract between master and servant, granted by the heavens. All it took was a drop of Chinfeng's blood. Now the clan was his loyal servants who would fight for him and follow him to the ends of the earth. Then Qin realized that with the contract, they would be more loyal than even the inhabitants of Dragon's Abyss. And he signed it. The contract was concluded. 327 people from the Qi clan became loyal followers of Chinfeng and automatically received the status of residents of Dragon's Abyss village. The 1,000-year punishment of the Qi clan was annulled. The restrictions were lifted, and the awakening of talents began. Player functions became available, the people rejoiced. Suddenly, Chinfeng's pet began to fall into a deep sleep. Qin began to worry. His assistant reassured him, saying that Xiaoluan was in the process of leveling up. The main thing was to ensure safe conditions for him. The 3-dimensional space was perfect for this, and Qin sent the phoenix there. Now he had to figure out where to place the new huts for the newcomers. Qin decided not to move the people who had lived there for many years and to build everything there. The people were incredibly happy. They finally had their own homes after so many years of suffering. The clan rescue mission was complete. Qin received 300 points and the right to build a teleportation array. The village had fulfilled all the conditions for advancing to the 2nd level and for building an altar. Qin immediately built a teleportation array in the village of Dragon's Whirlpool and a guardian altar there. Once again, an assistant appeared with the news that Dragon's Lair could now advance to the 2nd level with just one click. In addition, Qin received a total of 4,700 points for all his achievements. His combat power reached 197 stars. After upgrading the village, 5 teleportation arrays could be created, with a maximum of 5,000 residents and the price of primary energy stones reduced by half. Permission was also granted to learn the professions of blacksmith, pharmacist, and tailor. Qin wanted to master all 3 professions, as they were related to upgrading the hut to the 4th level. The conditions for a 3rd level village had already appeared. There were a lot of them, as the difficulty increase was still in effect. Then Qin said goodbye to the elder and set off to fulfill the conditions. On the 4th day, most of the villagers had only reached the 4th or 5th level. At this rate, nothing good would come of it. The sooner Qin reached the other villages, the more likely he would be able to save them before the deadline. In addition, Chinfeng needed to put in a lot of effort to achieve the Star Trust, which was one of the conditions for raising the village's level. If Qin does not receive the highest mark in the martial arts test, there can be no question of winning the great battle. While Chinfeng was flying and thinking in the sky, he encountered a young man who attacked him. After knocking the guy to the ground, Qin created a clone and began attacking him from all sides. The Earth-level Guardian was successfully destroyed. He gained 1,000,000 energy points and 327 points. At first, Chinfeng couldn't believe his eyes. 1,000,000 points. It turned out that this guy was the descendant of one of the participants who had lost in the Great Clan battle. Then it occurred to Chinfeng that if he destroyed a few more of these, he wouldn't have to worry about the martial arts trial. Of course, his assistant warned him that the Guardians were extremely dangerous and potential rivals to the contenders, because they also received a huge reward for their deaths. He didn't have to wait long. Following Zhang Wu came the next person who needed the reward. This one was a little stronger and much more confident than Zhang Wu. He considered Chinfeng to be very weak. The Guardian's main technique was the hereditary 1,000 Zhuan, ropes with stones wrapped around Chinfeng's body. The Guardian's combat power suddenly increased to 341 stars. Chinfeng's hands and feet were so busy that he couldn't use the storm and hellish flames. Therefore, he had to release a shadow clone. Of course, they only had half of Chinfeng's strength, so he needed to get out as soon as possible. When the Guardian finished with the shadow clones and headed toward Chinfeng, Xiaoluo from the 3-dimensional space spoke to him and asked him to come out. It was a 2nd-level phoenix. For some reason, it looked like a girl in a dress. Following Qin's instructions, he grabbed Xiaoluan's tail with his teeth, and Xiaoluan pulled him out. But now Xiaoluan couldn't teleport long distances, so they had to find a place to hide quickly. Grabbing Xiaoluan, Chinfeng teleported himself, leaving the Guardian in bewilderment. The Guardian searched the area for a long time, but could not sense Chinfeng's presence. However, he remained to wait and observe. Meanwhile, in the 3-dimensional dimension, Chinfeng was trying to find out from the girl if she was really Xiaoluo. It was indeed true. The burning red lotus had helped the phoenix take human form, but it turned out to be a girl. It was very dangerous to return now, and first he needed to increase his combat power. The first Guardian was of the semi-earth level, so Qin was able to handle him, but this one was of the earth level. Dragon fruits, spiritual plants, weapons. Qin did everything in his arsenal. His skills and talents were enhanced. His characteristics were improved. The technique of controlling combat pets can increase their strength by 60%. Xiao Luanyan's combat power is now 180 stars. Qin himself now had 299 stars and 2 shadow clones with 150 stars each. Now Qin should be able to deal with the Guardian. Of course, the Guardian was waiting for them, but so far Chinfong hadn't seen anything wrong. It turned out that the Guardian was no longer alone. There were many of them. The first one used the skill of destruction. A huge magic ball rushed toward Chinfong and Xiao Luanyan. Destruction was a collective technique of the Tsang clan. Several clan members had to work together so that the divine spirit would fill their bodies. Passing through the bodies of the vessels, the divine energy of the earth was completely purified. Then the earth-level master gathered the divine energy trapped in the bodies of others. He forms a spiritual sphere in which the energy increases tenfold. But this technique had a drawback. After using such a powerful skill, a person's strength would disappear for 10 seconds. However, the clan did not worry about this because they were sure that no one would survive such a powerful blow. But not this time. Chinfong not only dodged but also attacked with his clones and the phoenix, which now spewed flames. In the flames, the guardians died one after another, especially the weaker ones. Even the strongest among them did not understand how this was possible. How could anyone survive such destruction? And he decided to flee. He was fast, but Qin followed him all the way to the village called Taiyue. Standing in the center of the teleportation circle, the guardian told Chinfong that their clan would still crush him, and then he disappeared. The portal was in good condition, and Qin decided to use a special map to connect the village of Dragon's Whirlpool with the village of Taiyue. Taiyue was an abandoned ancient city. It was unclear what was there, so Qin advised his people not to go there for the time being. The next destination was the temple under the heavenly lake. Chinfong and Xiaoluan set off for it. The temple was a beautiful large building with columns and clouds surrounding it. The place was guarded by a flying snake, the guardian spirit of the first palace. Its combat power was 100 stars. To deal with him, Qin asked his phoenix to show the snake what real fire was. From that moment on, Chinfong could move freely within the first palace without anyone interfering. There were 9 palaces in total, each guarded by a spirit. The first palace was the Palace of the Secrets of Nature. When Qin entered the palace, he was reminded that destruction was forbidden there. Upon entering, Qin realized that he was far from the first to arrive. There were many contenders from different worlds. There were 12 people from the Great Heliocosm, 4 from the Middle, and 1 from the Small. The contenders looked at Chinfong and whispered among themselves. He is young from the Small Heliocosm and already here. He is incredibly lucky. One of them even began to dream that when she became the empress of the large Heliocosm, she would get him into her harem. After paying the deposit, the first old man received a mission token. Everyone was shocked. A mission token of this rank is very rare. As a reward for a mission of this rank, one can receive a purple chest. Drenched in sweat, Qin stood there, not understanding what kind of deposit they were talking about. He didn't have anything like that. Overhearing the conversation between the old man and the 2 centaurs, Qin realized that she had given the core of her hatred as a deposit. When Qin went to receive his token, everyone started laughing and was sure that he would receive the lowest ranking token. As collateral, Qin used 3 things at once: the bracelet, ring, and bracelet he had received from the demon of hatred. The temple was blinded by a bright light, and Chinfeng received 3 tokens at once: a rank, C rank, and S rank. It is difficult to describe the shock that the other applicants felt at what they saw. Under the astonished gazes of those who saw him off, Chinfeng left the Palace of Nature. Some were skeptical and said that it didn't mean anything yet, because these tasks had to be completed first. Missions of rank C and above would likely consist of a series of quests. If there was a time limit, that would be problematic. At the same time, behind the doors of the Guardian's house, a conversation was taking place. It was about the contender who had destroyed one of them. Everyone was concerned that the competition was not even over yet, and such a strong newcomer had already appeared. Moreover, this contender was only from the small Heliocos. The assistant to the elders, Tsang Sun, was furious as he recounted their meeting. In the opinion of the elders, they couldn't leave it at that. This man had too much power, and he would accumulate even more. The elders decided that they needed to find Chinfong and destroy him. Since he had appeared not far from Taiyue, they would use that city as a starting point for their search. No matter how powerful he was, he couldn't defeat an entire clan. Perhaps they could find out where he got his power and deal with him in one fell swoop. Moreover, the elders wanted to destroy all contenders so that their clan's power would rise to a new level. This would enable them to participate in the next great battle. 300 men were gathered from each district, for a total of 500. Tomorrow, an army of 3,000 men would set out in search of him. The son of the head of the Tsang clan, Tsang Ming, did not understand why they should wait until morning when they could attack at night. A friend explained to him that a mysterious monster lived in the heavenly lake. Every night, it summoned the ghosts of those who had died unjustly, and they destroyed everything in their path. The city of Taiyue was closest to this lake, so it became a ghost town. The street was bustling despite the fact that dusk was already falling. At the entrance to Chinfeng's tavern, a girl stopped him. She offered him a snack. Qin activated his Eye of Truth. All the food in this establishment was worm-eaten and rotten, and the girl herself was not human. Chinfong then jumped away from her as far as he could. They had been exposed. All of them. The city revealed its true face, and the monsters began to attack Chinfong. He had already activated the Hellfire and directed it toward all the monsters. The Hellfire had no effect on them. After all, they themselves were from Hell. As the Guardian had said, these spirits had no physical form, so physical attacks had absolutely no effect on them. Attacking them in the usual way is like cutting clouds. It makes no sense. One spirit is not a threat. It is dangerous when they gather in a crowd. Their howls can damage the soul and split the mind, and when the soul of the attacked person is separated from the body, they flock together in an attempt to devour it. That is why no one ever dares to touch them. It is all useless. Qin didn't know any of this. Using acoustic protection, he tried to attack them in various ways. Surprisingly, the fierce thunder he summoned from the heavens was able to destroy these spirits. Qin gained points of varying degrees. In this way, Chinfeng reached the 18th level. His combat power was 320 stars. Strange red stones began to fall from the sky, and something began to happen. Chinfong felt unwell. His head spun. And now he was standing in the middle of an office in the ordinary world. People were walking around as if nothing had happened. No games, no missions, no destruction, no points. A guy approached Chinfong and said that his boss had been waiting for him for a long time. The director informed Chinfong that he had been promoted to administrator because he was doing a very good job. He would receive a monthly salary of 100,000 yuan, 30 days of paid vacation, and bonuses at the end of the year. Chin agreed. A few hours later, Chinfong was already at the club with his friends, celebrating his promotion. Everything seemed fine, but something was missing. Something was wrong. During this illusion, the real Chinfong was falling deeper and deeper into the lake, and his ghosts were already waiting for him. Xiaoluan created a protective bubble to prevent Chin from drowning, and tried with all her might to wake him up as quickly as possible. The city, the streets, the people, it all seemed unreal. His friends weren't really his friends. The same was true of his family. At one point, Chinfong even thought that something was wrong with his head, but he didn't know who to tell. And then deja vu struck. Dragons appeared in the sky. There were people on the dragons saying that the planet no longer belonged to humans. And then some kind of balls flew toward the city. These people looked so familiar to Chinfeng. The balls fell and exploded. People died. Everything around him was collapsing. His mind told Chinfeng to fight these people if they were people at all, but he didn't know how to do that. All this time, Xiaoluan was desperately trying to break through her master's strange dream. And then the world began to take on more recognizable features. There was his sword, and there was his armor. Then Chinfeng found himself back in his office. The phone was ringing. It was his boss. It seemed he had managed to escape the first illusion, but he had fallen into a second one. Now he understood that whoever was controlling the illusion was trying to destroy him, and Chin didn't notice that someone was pointing a gun at him, someone outside whom he couldn't see. A shot rang out. An explosion followed. A group of armed men burst in and reported that the target had been eliminated, but somewhere they had miscalculated. Chin was unharmed, and he already understood everything. Then Chin decided to test his strength against modern weapons and unleashed hell. The soldiers surrounded Chinfeng and informed him that they would shoot to kill if he did not surrender voluntarily. But the rebellious Chin spread his wings and descended toward the building, landing on the roof of a tank. With a single movement of his hand, he tore off the barrel. This illusion was not very realistic as it turned out. Raising his hand, Chin summoned an icy storm, and arrows of ice rushed toward the enemies and their equipment. This illusion was already unstable. A little more and Chinfeng would be free. The next step was the fighter jets. They dropped at least 100 bombs on the city. Against the fighter jets, Chinfeng used fierce thunder, and it worked again. The energy sustaining the illusion was running out. Chinfeng could feel it. Very soon it would all disappear. When he came to, Chin thanked Xiaoluan for a job well done, but he would handle the rest himself. Ghosts surrounded Chinfeng. They were in the lake. Chin created a barrier that spun the ghosts in all directions. Now it was her turn. The dark spellcaster, the one who had driven him into those strange illusions. She used to be a dark messenger for the Lord of Justice, and she sensed the aura of a judge in Chinfeng. But Chinfeng didn't even listen to her. He continued to spread chaos across the lake. A tsunami of thunderstorms raged beneath the water. Chinfeng's behavior infuriated the spellcaster. She grabbed him and threw him against a rock, but this only made him angrier, and Chinfeng bound the spellcaster in his hellish chains. Finally, she tried to create another illusion, but to no avail. The spellcaster was destroyed. 1 million energy points and 15 reputation points were obtained. A core of darkness and 3 golden chests were obtained. Also 5,000 justice points and a special item, the Dark Seal. The illusion helped Chinfeng understand what he wanted. He was an ordinary man living an ordinary life, but the appearance of this world changed everything. Now he had power, and he liked it. From the body of the Dark Spellcaster, Chin extracted the A-rank talent Dark Law and the 5th level skill Dark Dispersion. At the bottom of the lake was a path strewn with crystals. It led Chinfeng to the house, the sorceress's abode. In the middle of the room stood a 2-pole dragon and phoenix furnace. There were also many interesting things around it, but none of it was suitable. Everything was unsuitable for Chinfeng. But from one pill, he extracted impurities and toxins. The pill was transformed into a 1st level Siberian pill. Qian extracted the pills from all the waste. He decided to distribute them to the villagers to improve their characteristics. One pill gave 18 points. But only 10 could be taken. There was little time left before dawn, and Xin decided to deal with the tasks. The S-level mission consisted of 5 tasks that became more difficult as they progressed. The first stage was to purify all the spirits. Done. The second stage was to destroy the spellcaster. Also done. Quite by accident, Chinfeng completed 2 difficult tasks from the mission. The rewards for the mission were 3 cards. A super synthesis card, a luck card, and a land deed card. They were awesome. With the deed card, Chinfeng could sever the clan's ties with the village and the portal in the city. For the second stage of the mission, Chinfeng gained control over ability fusion. This right allows him to choose 2 skills with a certain compatibility, the intensity of which changes after fusion. Suddenly, a girl from Chinfeng's village contacted him. She said that her A-rank skill, Temporary Position, could cover an area with a radius of 5 meters in a non-combat state. 2 days had already passed inside, but only 1 outside. The girl believed that her talent could be useful to Chinfeng. But Chinfeng didn't know that the girl's grandfather insisted that she become his concubine. He believed that this would help their family. Then Chinfeng ordered the girl to use teleportation to reach the Heavenly Lake. He would wait for her there. And in just a couple of minutes, she arrived at the Heavenly Lake and at the sorceress's house. After moving to a 3-dimensional space where it was safe and quiet, Chin asked the girl to activate her ability. She was amazed at how much was hidden in his storage. The girl folded her hands in front of her and began. Waves of light swirled around her. The initial countdown began. The temporary position was established. Chin thanked her and began his practice. But before that, he gave the girl a pill that would make her stronger. It would take at least an hour to extract it successfully, but with the force field, it should be possible to manage it in half an hour. While Chinfong extracted the glasses from the collected items under the influence of the force field, the girl examined everything in the dimension. Sure enough, half an hour later, Chinfong finished all his extractions. Much faster than usual. His combat power was 380 stars. That was still not enough. There was also a limit to how much magical herbs he could absorb. The assistant suggested that Chinfong learn the profession of alchemist for 20,000 contribution points. He agreed. He received basic recipes for potions and pills. Over time, these skills would develop. Next, Chin decided to try merging abilities. He began by merging the skills of Shadow Dispersion and Shadow Clone. The fusion was successful. He acquired the skill Shadow Stream Master. Dispersion and Clone were lost. This new skill allowed him to create 2 clones with the full combat power of the Master. Moreover, any detection type skills were unable to distinguish the clones from their masters. It was so cool that Chin didn't believe it and decided to try out the skill. Seeing 3 masters at once, the girl was speechless. All 3 were identical. After acquiring 2 more alchemical furnaces, Chin and his clones began creating pills. The process went very quickly. If they continued like this, they would finish in 5 hours. Without clones, Chin had estimated it would take 33 hours. The Kang clan, consisting of 9 formations, held a meeting. 3,000 people were gathered to capture a single contender. Some did not understand why there was so much fuss over one guy, but Chin had defeated the Earth-level elder Tsang Tu. It turned out that the Earth level also had sub-levels. Masters who had achieved a combat power of 100 stars but had not passed the martial arts test were called semi-Earth level masters. The semi-Earth level is divided into 3 stages, which are awarded based on victory over the spiritual beasts guarding the first 3 temples. Only those who reach the 4th temple and pass the martial arts test are called Earth Masters. The Earth level also has 3 stages. The deceased Tsang Tu was 4th class, but the clan elder is stronger. After gathering everyone, Elder Hoi left the clan's base in the care of Elder Gong and prepared to lead the expedition. However, there was a danger of invasion by an enemy clan, so Hoi remained behind and Gong was chosen as the leader. The Tsang clan began to try to reach their destination through the teleport, but there was a mistake. The portals between their village and the village of Yue-Tu were disconnected. The elder was indignant. Meanwhile, Chinfong decided to undergo the trial of the defender's spirit to advance to the 2nd stage. After a night of working on the pills, Chen could no longer improve his stats. Qiyu truly possessed exceptional talent and would be useful in the future. In addition to her force field, Qiyue helped deal with current issues. Now, Chinfong arrived at the 2nd level temple. There were already people there again. The number of contenders had reached its maximum, and it was time to begin the universal battles. Under the feet of the contenders was a large portal that could transport them to any corner of the world. Each use of the portal required the use of a universal stone. To obtain these stones, one must fight and take them from opponents. Each contender would receive 3 universal stones for free. If you defeated your opponent, you could take all of their stones. The contender with the most stones would be declared the winner and receive a secret prize from the organizers. After counting, Chinfong realized that he needed 16 universal stones. If each opponent had 3 stones, he would have to fight 3 opponents. One of the participants asked if he could just give up his stones instead of fighting. The answer was yes. However, this would result in the player's elimination. After that, the assistant asked everyone to confirm their participation in the competition. The customer support service selected an opponent for each participant based on their data. From the 1st district, Chinfong was paired with Gary from the 33rd district. Gary and Chinfing were the first to fight for the stones. Gary was from the middle Heliocosma. Only now did Chin notice that there were people in the stands shouting loudly to cheer on the contestants. The spectators were placing bets. Those who did not bet were removed from watching the next match. As the assistant explained, there were no rules in the battle. Any technique could be used. The contest began. Chin struck with a force of 30 tons, but it only deformed his opponent's arm for a moment. Although Harry himself knew that Chin was from the small Heliocosma and was not worried, he began to feel tense. In addition to his basic techniques, Harry could even release small bombs at his opponent. Explosions rocked the ring one after another, but Chinfeng's sword was no ordinary weapon. It was so powerful that it managed to sever Harry's mechanical arm. The audience was puzzled. Few expected that a man from the small town of Heliocosma could be so strong. However, Harry had no intention of giving up. Iron chains and tentacles emerged from his body and grabbed Chinfong, but he managed to break free without much effort. Even though his sword had fallen, Chinfeng's hands were also quite powerful. Fortunately, Chin could use his talent for controlling the earth and shadow ropes to fix the position of his feet. However, if this continued for long, Harry could simply break Chinfeng's legs. He had to get out of there. A worthy opponent. But could he withstand Chinfeng's fire? And Qin activated his hellish flames. Since awakening his S-rank talent, no one had been able to compete with Harry, and now he didn't understand where this guy had come from. It was obvious that Harry was losing. Chin grabbed him with shadow chains and began to slam him against the walls. Harry from the 33rd district admitted defeat, and Chinfong from the 1st district became the winner. According to the assistant, the restriction had been lifted, bets could be placed, and the winner would receive a reward. Chin didn't understand these words at all. What restriction was he talking about? In the center of the ring where Harry lay, strange monsters appeared. They grabbed him and dragged him away. Chinfong was completely shocked by what he saw. He hadn't expected this. After all, the assistant hadn't even warned them what would happen to the losers. Qin received the 3 stones of the loser. It was up to him alone to decide whether to continue the battle. Now Chinfong had 6 stones. He needed 10 more. He couldn't let his people down. He had to continue. Spectators whose bets had won in the previous round and who had collected the required number of soul fragments could participate. Sar from the Danzang clan had earned this right. Sar had waited 1,000 years for this opportunity. As it turned out, the spectators were those who had lost their competitions, and now they were eternal spectators. Sar was from the Danzang clan, which had been abandoned by the heavens. His family survived rather than lived in a foggy forest, waiting for a new emperor. However, everything that was dear to him was destroyed in a matter of days with the arrival of that very pretender. All he left behind was a strand of hair. Then Sar decided to take revenge, to end the hatred of the heavens and rush to the temple of 1,000 apparitions. The thought of revenge warmed his soul. But then, in a duel with the pretender, Sar unfortunately lost. His opponent was the very one who had destroyed all his relatives, but Harry was taken away by monsters. And only now, having chosen the body of this monster, did Sar finally get a chance to take revenge on everyone. Now, in the body of a monster, it would be easier than last time. The battle began. The monster Sar was very fast. Qin barely managed to dodge his attacks. The contestants began the battle without bets from the audience. Then the assistant asked them to take their time and revealed the appearance of Sar's chosen body. It was a clone of a mysterious beast brought out of a space rift. It possessed speed comparable to that of a B-rank talent and strength comparable to that of an A-rank. Its sharp claws and teeth could easily cut through metal and stone. Its skin only looks soft and smooth. In reality, it is invulnerable, but it also has another terrifying ability. Its blood is like a highly flammable liquid that explodes upon contact with a target. Defensive abilities below rank 4 are completely ineffective against this phenomenon. After the contestant chose this body, his combat power increased to 400 stars. Now the audience was allowed to place their bets. Of course, few believed in Chinfeng's success against such a monster, and it was really very difficult for him. The dark night blade that Qin had been counting on was simply broken in 2 by the beast. Qin was stunned by the shock. This enraged Chinfeng. It was his best weapon. He gathered all his strength and released all his energy in a torrent of rage. Amidst the monster's torrent of curses, Qin saw glimpses of its past life and all its pain. The monster was defeated. Sar himself sat next to its body, crying with his head in his hands. Approaching him, Qin expressed his sympathy and apologized. He would not wish this on anyone, but he had no choice. And Qin unleashed hellfire on Sar. But in the end, Chinfong promised Sar that he would avenge him and destroy all his enemies. Since this was his second victory, Chinfong was awarded 6 stones at once. And what a surprise it was when Qin announced that he wanted to continue. The spectators were afraid to oppose Chinfeng and put themselves forward as candidates. Even the assistant was confused. There were no volunteers. But the fight had to continue somehow. He disappeared. Permission was granted. The door opened and she entered the room where 2 young girls were standing. They were bored. They were waiting for a girl in a suit who had just entered. Lady Punisher summoned her on a very important matter. She got up from the bed. The Punisher said she wanted to relieve her boredom and that of the girls. The second girl did not understand what she was talking about. The girl in the costume was the assistant. Since the battle could not continue, the Punisher had an idea. Although the Punisher had no right to interfere during the evaluation of new recruits, she wanted to make a proposal. The second girl, who was lying in bed, asked if the Punisher was sure that Qin could defeat the alien body she had brought from the depths of space. Chinfeng's face was familiar to her. Incidentally, she had never seen the Punisher interfere in the affairs of the wider world before. And then the Punisher said that it was simply because Chinfeng reminded her of an old friend. So the proposal was as follows. A game of hunters. All spectators would be given the same appearance. Chinfeng would enter the sacred ruins for 1 hour. All spectators are hunters. Chinfeng is the prey. The hunters must catch the prey, for which they will receive resurrection as a reward. The prey must avoid attack and capture. If the prey is still alive after an hour, it wins. If the prey destroys all the hunters, it will receive 500,000 points for switching roles. Chinfeng was allowed to refuse to participate in this battle if he did not want to, but he decided to start the game. The hunters surrounded Chinfeng as soon as he entered the sacred ruins. The first thing he used was his 3rd level skill, Energy Release. This group of hunters was destroyed immediately. Their combat power of 200 stars was no match for Chinfeng's strength, but they weren't alone. Around the corner, a crowd many times larger awaited him. The hunters split into teams to prevent Chinfeng from escaping. The hunters' tactic was to attack in waves to wear down their enemy, but Chinfeng was ready for anything. He was waiting for them, and he started to run. He wanted to have some fun. Using his clones, Chinfeng led the hunters into a great deception. The eye of truth of one of the hunters showed them where the real Chinfeng was, or so they thought. They did not know that his skill made him impossible to recognize. Counting 54 hunters, Chinfeng decided it was time to begin. A furious thunderclap. The ground beneath the hunters' feet shook, and they began to fall into a pit that had appeared out of nowhere. It was a trap. Gather them in one place and destroy them. Moving through space, controlling the earth and metal, his thunderstorm, which he had demonstrated during the duel. The hunters couldn't understand where he got so much talent. Chinfeng's miscalculation was correct. They all fell under the force of the earthquake. There were too many hunters to begin with. If Qin had picked them off one by one, he wouldn't have been able to destroy them all. Attacking them all at once was also not an option because they were all so strong. Therefore, the best option was to gather them into small groups and destroy them that way. It was time to move on. The clone led the hunters to the next location. There, they would fall into another trap. Once he had gathered this group, Qin planned to attack immediately, forming a wall of fire around the hunters. Then he would use his gold manipulation skills and 5 elements talent, weaken the building's frame so it would collapse. In this area, icy arrows would already be waiting in the air. and his plan worked perfectly. It was an impressive finale. Everything went exactly as Chinfong had calculated. There were no hunters left. Behind Chinfong stood Ju Yu. The assistant ordered her not to touch the contender without permission. Ju Yu was a heavenly punisher. She introduced herself. She was the one who had offered 500,000 points as a reward for victory. Heaven has rules. Punishers cannot interfere with the affairs of contenders during the trial stage. However, the sacred ruins are an exception. Qin entered here voluntarily, and this territory is not controlled by heaven. Then Qin said that he was tired of this intrigue and wanted to know why the Avenger had lured him here. And she began to attack. She was strong. None of Chinfeng's attacks left even a scratch on Ju Yu. She even found it amusing. But Ju Yu herself did not stand on ceremony. She attacked him, and it was successful. Now Qin was practically helpless. Everything happened so fast that it was impossible to concentrate and do anything. The Punisher planned to destroy Chinfong today. It was his last option. He extracted 5 elements from the sacred ruins to create a sphere whose power was equal to that of a nuclear bomb. Chinfong really hoped that this option would work, but alas, the Punisher didn't even get dirty. The power of the elements was also ineffective. Chinfong released Xiao Luanyan to help. While Chinfong used shadow shackles, Xiao Luanyan was supposed to release the golden flame. But again, the plan failed. The Punisher grabbed Xiao Luanyan halfway and squeezed her in her fist. She began to say strange things. Something about Long Zhu and how she became a heavenly Punisher because of some accident. And she knew that Long Zhu couldn't have died. She had waited for thousands of years watching every contender to destroy him again. The Avenger squeezed Xiao Luan so tightly in her fist that she began to lose strength. Qin attacked with thunder and Xiao Luan slipped away. Then Qin realized that elemental talents might not hurt the Avenger, but they did have some effect. Gathering his strength, Qin continued to use his elemental talents. Now the earth. The Punisher's feet sank into the sand. Fire. She was surrounded by flames. And finally, an icy storm. The Executioner stood there laughing. It all seemed insanely pathetic to her. After all, she considered herself completely and utterly invincible. But the icy arrows were able to immobilize her. And while the Avenger was trapped, Chinfong began to strike, one blow after another. But even while trapped in ice, the Executioner shouted that it was all useless against her. Then the Executioner lifted a ball of earth above the surface, and this ball flew apart, freeing her. Qin was wounded, and his regeneration was slow. Xiao Luan saved Chinfong from a huge chunk of ice flying towards him. He was very lucky to have her. The Executioner continued to mock and taunt Chinfong, saying that he was powerless. To save Chinfong, Xiao Luan teleported him, but the chunk damaged her lungs and heart. They needed to find a safe place to heal. But no matter how far Chinfong ran, the Executioner caught up with him, and so at some point, he lost his arm. He fell, exhausted. Fortunately, it was only a clone. At that time, Chinfong and Xiao Luan hid in a safe place to recover and rest a little. Fortunately, Chinfong had potions from the alchemy lab with him that allowed him to quickly restore his strength, both his own and Xiao Luan's. After a while, Chinfong sensed that all the clones had been destroyed. Soon the Executioner would come for them. Teleporting upstairs, Qin continued the battle. He attacked again and again. Knocking off the Executioner's mask, Chinfong hoped to find her weak spot. Unfortunately, that wasn't it. The Executioner's eyes were strange, like a camera with lenses, and her gaze made Chinfong dizzy. His body seemed to separate from him, decomposing into its constituent parts, and she struck. Qin flew to the side. He didn't understand what had happened. It was as if his soul and body had been split in two. This skill was a last resort, but the Executioner had told her about it. Her eyes possessed magical powers. Whatever was blocked by her gaze automatically ceased to function. If anyone tried to move, their body and soul would be torn apart in the blink of an eye. Qinfen and Xiao urgently needed to find the Executioner's weak spot. Otherwise, they would not survive this fight. Then Qin pounced from behind. After all, blind spots are outside the influence of her eyes. But the Executioner repelled the attack. Once again, Chinfeng was on the brink. He withstood several soul breaks, but it was getting harder and harder. The Executioner was very interested in how much he could endure, and she wanted to push Chinfeng to his limit. Qin figured out one thing. If he kept the Executioner at a distance of 20,000 meters, her abilities did not work, and he counterattacked. And it worked. The Executioner was furious. Qin approached and struck. This time the blow slightly grazed the Executioner. However, the Executioner's blows were much more effective and Qin was severely wounded again. In a few seconds, the Heavenly Dragon's armor would break, and then Chinfeng would definitely be finished. There was one more idea left. Chinfeng sent Xiao Luan straight into the Punisher's hands, and she grabbed her again with her fist. The little phoenix struck the Executioner's magical eyes with a burst of flame. She instantly released Xiao and grabbed her eyes with her hand. She was furious. Her face was burned. With the Executioner practically blinded, it became much easier to attack her. She struggled to control her fists, and at some point the Executioner noticed too late that she was being enveloped by Chinfeng's chains. While the Executioner tried to free herself, all her armor fell off. As it turned out, each piece of armor weighed 10,000 tons, and simply held back her true power. Now the Executioner was determined to show it in all its glory. She began to beat Chinfeng mercilessly again. After she removed her armor, Ju Yu's speed increased incredibly. Qin wanted to move into three-dimensional space, but Xiao Luan said she could continue. But now Qin had no way to teleport, and it became even more difficult to fight. At one point, the executioner struck so hard that Qin began to fall from a great height. The executioner flew after him. With the help of shadow chains, Qin took part of her armor, and she ended up hitting it with her fist. Chinfong was not hit, but he still fell, and he fell very hard. He literally split the ground. Qin did not dare to hide in three-dimensional space. Xiaoluan and Qiyue were there. There was a chance that the Punisher would follow him there. He had to come up with another way out. The Punisher kept talking about destruction, but continued to play cat and mouse. He had to find her weak spot urgently. And then Qiyue came out of the three-dimensional space and said she had come to stop the Punisher. She activated time stasis. In the end, this became her biggest mistake. The Punisher threw part of his armor into the force field in an attempt to break through it. Absolutely certain that she had slowed down time, Qiyue did not understand how the armor could have flown through the field so quickly. She had no chance to dodge. The difference in strength between the Executioner and Qiyue was simply too great, and therefore these abilities had no effect on the Executioner. Chinfeng's situation was already dire. Qiyue was very ashamed that instead of helping, she had made things worse. And the Executioner kept talking about some Lun Zhu. Apparently she had confused him with Chinfong. Maybe that was the key to defeating her. Keiyu had a skill card. She could allow Chinfong to use the Wings of the Wind, and then use the skill to interact with the clones. All Chinfong needed was a minute to win, but then the Executioner approached. Qin was about to set off an explosion to give everyone time to escape. While Qiyue tried to find someone through the clouds of smoke, Qin hid in a safe place. There, he swallowed all kinds of pills and ate dragon fruit. The clone and Qiyue distracted the Punisher. Suddenly, the Executioner caught Qiyue and threw her to the ground. She demanded to know where Chinfong was. But he was already there. The Executioner was struck on the head from the side. It was a very unexpected and powerful blow. Although Chinfeng's wings were broken, he used their second transformed form. Wind wings are an extremely powerful thing. However, this power is not released in the first form. In the second form, their power is equal to that of the Executioner. After unleashing the second form of his wind wings, Chinfeng struck again. Fortunately, this was still not enough because the power of the wings weakened over time. Chinfeng's ribs were broken and his energy was only half restored. No matter how much dragon blood fruit he ate, he could not defeat the Punisher. She, on the other hand, was extremely pleased with herself. She was already ready to deliver the final blow and destroy Chinfeng. But once again, the fragile Qiyue came to his defense. Since Qin had suffered because of her, she was willing to sacrifice herself. Qiyu offered her life to the Executioner in exchange for Chinfeng's life. When Qin saw this, he screamed in madness, and something began to happen to him. The Executioner's efforts were not in vain. She got what she wanted. Here was the spirit of the dragon. Finally, Chinfeng managed to awaken him, albeit under such tragic circumstances. It was an amazing aura of greatness. The Executioner noticed that it was almost the same as Long Zhu's back then, but it was all a bluff. The real Long Zhu had not yet awakened. But Juyu would definitely wait for that day. She would return to the abode of the Eternal. Suddenly, an assistant appeared between the Executioner, Juyu, and Chinfeng. It was unacceptable for Juyu to personally contact the Pretender in an attempt to destroy him by creating sacred ruins that would isolate him from the eyes of heaven. The assistant warned that she would report this to the Heavenly Path, but the Executioner did not care. She had already done what she wanted. After all, she knew for sure that Qin was Long Zhu. As soon as the novice period ended, Zhu Yu would finish him off. Next time, he wouldn't be so lucky. The village head, Chinfeng, finished the hunter's game with 500,000 points. As compensation for the Heavenly Path's oversight, he received the right to purchase unlimited universal stones. He also received a 7th rank artifact, a divine weapon, and 6th level armor, the Zhuantian dragon armor. Qin asked his assistant who this Avenger was. All she could say was that it was a demigod who had arrived from the abode of the Eternal, demoted in rank. For everything the Punisher Zhu Yu had done, Qin promised to repay her and take revenge. Activating the universal teleport, Qin entered Area 618. He sent out invitations to all the villagers. Those who accepted would automatically become residents of his village, 911. The residents were happy. Qin then did the same with District 3477. Now the village of Dragon Whirlpool could be upgraded to level 3. Not only was the village the first to reach the 3rd level, but its residents also received 1,000 points each, and the village head received 2,000 points. The village also gained city walls. If they were improved, there would be no need to fear enemies anymore. In the end, after distributing all his points, Chinfeng became level 18 with a strength of 1,200 stars. He also had a huge number of talents and attribute points, which were his advantage. All that remained was to inform the elder of Qiyue's death. Chinfeng headed toward him. But the village still had problems. The city walls were still not built, and the Song clan's army was about to break through. Qiyuan went to them alone. Hearing this, Chinfeng rushed to help Qiyuan. After all, he was Qiyue's younger brother. He couldn't let him die. The Song clan's army was already approaching the village of Dragon's Whirlpool. They were opposed by a handful of people from the village. It was too unequal a fight. Among them was, of course, Qiyuan. He fought well, but the clan's army was too large. In addition, the clan had the ability to use quicksand, which made their opponents literally helpless. The red sand snakes did not improve the situation. Reinforcements were needed urgently, and they arrived. The clan members noticed something strange. Chinfeng's shackles had saved the villagers. But Qin couldn't find Qiyuan anywhere. This worried him greatly. No one knew where he was. Qin ordered everyone to leave immediately. He would handle the rest himself. Chinfeng's allies were worried about whether he could handle an army of 3,000 men. But he was doing well. Most of the Chang clan's army had already been defeated. Chinfeng still couldn't find Qiyuna, so he called Xiao Luan and sent her to look for him. While Xiao Luan was searching for the young man, Chinfeng continued to deal with the clan. Rising into the sky and surveying the entire battlefield, Xiao found Qiyun and reported this to Chinfeng. This was very timely because Qiyuna and his comrades were already losing strength. When Qin appeared, he ordered Xiao Luan to quickly send the people back to Taiyue. The battle pet teleported them back to the village. Qin was left alone with the clan. A huge army against one man. The clan rushed to attack Chinfeng. All his comrades were safe, and he could begin. The clan members immediately sensed a strange, oppressive aura. Even the monster the clan had brought with them began to feel fear for no reason. A dragon had been unleashed. None of the clan's combined defensive skills worked. Even the strongest Earth-level masters were powerless against Chinfeng and his might. Waves of dragon flames engulfed the members of the Song clan one after another. The ruler of the Song clan was defeated. As a reward, Qin received the Earth token of the Song clan. Qin gained a lot of points and energy from this battle. In the future, it will be possible to establish a portal between Taiyue and the Chang clan, so that all residents can choose military trophies. Thanks to his success in this battle, Chinfeng was able to reach level 20. He then returned to his village, where the residents were already waiting for Chinfeng with congratulations and greetings. The grateful people brought Chinfeng many gifts of various ranks and properties. A little further away, Qin noticed the elder Qi Shan standing alone in a corner. Apparently, he already suspected something about Qi Yue. At that time, a meeting of elders from various clans was taking place. They listened to the report on the destruction of the King clan and could not believe their ears. Everyone believed that Chinfeng had to be dealt with before he reached the peak of his power. But what to do now was unclear. Clan elder Ye Han suggested that Chinfeng's power was comparable to that of a heavenly being. The clan elder of the Fei Lin clan believed that this was impossible. Even someone from the Great Helicosm could not reach the heavenly level so quickly. However, the clan elder Xiao Yun said that Qin was probably even stronger than everyone thought, and that he should not be underestimated. Chinfeng's opponents from the Song clan were one master with the first level of the heavenly realm, and one with the 9th level of the earthly realm. According to the calculations of the clan leaders, Qin was at least a 3rd level heavenly realm master. Then Yuan Kun, the elder of the Yuan clan with the 3rd level of the heavenly realm, reported that the strength of this contender was beyond imagination. To defeat him, they would have to unite. But the Yuan clan never united with weaker clans, and he did not want to participate in this and withdrew. For the Yuan clan, looking down on others was the norm. After all, they still had the support of that creature. While the residents celebrated, Qin informed the elder Qi Shanyu of Qi Yue's death and her bravery. The elder was proud of her and asked Chinfeng not to blame himself for her death. But Chinfeng was struggling. He was now responsible for these people. And back then, in the battle with the executioner, he had barely managed to dodge. How would he be able to protect them now? Then the elder spoke of Long Zhu. Qin was taken aback. That was the name the Avenger had repeated. The Qi clan had an ancient book that had been passed down from generation to generation. The elder remembered it when Qin told him about the executioner. It records the deeds of the ancestral gods who lived many years ago. After looking through the book, Qin suggested that the executioner might have been demoted to the position of executioner because of the fall of the dragon ancestor. Fragments of the true spirit were scattered, but there was still a chance for its revival. Qin possessed skills similar to those of Long Zhu, the dragon ancestor, so the Punisher mistook him for the reincarnation of the dragon. Fearing revenge, he uses the Punisher's identity to control the entire world. As soon as a strong newcomer appears, the executioner gets rid of him immediately. The Punisher is at least a 4th level master of the heavenly realm. If Qin does not reach this level in 2 days, the village of Dragon Whirlpool will come to an end. And now Chinfeng had no idea what to do to save everyone from this disaster. There was a knock on the door. The village elder was informed that the enemy army was approaching the village. There were many of them. Not only people, but all kinds of huge monsters. This was the army of the Xiao clan and others who had joined them, led by Xiao Yun. Chinfeng was already waiting for them at the city gates. As Xiao reported, they had come to avenge their friends from the Kang clan. This army numbered 10,000 men. Xiao believed that Qin would definitely not be able to defeat them. If a battle was to be fought, there would be casualties on both sides, so Xiao Yun had a proposal. A battle between one of his 3 men and one of Qin's men. If Qin won, Xiao would take his army and go home. Xiao's plan was simple. Even if they lost, they would be able to study Chinfeng's fighting techniques and skills. This would help them fight as a team in the future. Agreeing, Chinfeng demanded that 3 representatives come forward. Ye Heng, Fei Xin, and Xiao Gu stepped forward. All 3 rushed forward toward Chinfeng. They all had different weapons, but the first one immediately fell from Chinfeng's blow. One of them had a firearm, but Qin skillfully dodged the bullets. Moreover, with the help of shadow shackles, Qin took away this weapon. Yi Hen from the Ye clan was disarmed. The surviving members of the Tsang clan mentioned something very important. It is known that Qin possesses at least 3 skills: flight, elemental control, and dragon attack. These 3 were recognized as worthy opponents for him. Ye Hen's skill was supposed to significantly limit his ability to fly. Fei Xing's skill was similar to Chinfeng's elemental control. It could have delayed Chinfeng. And when these 2 had restricted Chinfeng's movements, the final blow was to be delivered by Xiao Gu. Before the battle, the representatives received pills that doubled all their strength. The pills began to work. For a moment, Xiao Gu's strength even confused Chinfeng. But only for a moment. When Fei Xing tried to use her power, Qin approached from behind and summoned thunder. The extraction was complete. The talent to control the elements was obtained. The talents were being combined. The update failed because the level of the absorbed talent was too low. In just a few moments, the strongest members of the Xiao clan were defeated. The clan leader was in shock. He had the feeling that Qin wasn't even fighting at full strength. It seemed that it was time for the elder of the Xiao clan to take action himself. Of course, he had deceived Chinfong and did not leave. Instead, he threw his entire army into battle. But Qin would not have let them go so easily. Qin repelled all attacks in midair. More than half of the fighters were destroyed instantly, but Xiao did not consider these sacrifices in vain. After all, it was worth it to capture the village of Dragon's Whirlpool. The head of the Xiao clan had another kind of divine skill that allowed him to remain on par with the strongest. Divine consciousness, the 8th skill. Chinfeng's entire body was paralyzed by these strange threads, and he could only move his head. Only the protective function of his armor saved him. The most interesting thing was that these threads did not cling to the flesh but to the soul. While Qin was immobilized, the clan members rushed at him again. The village of Dragon Whirlpool seemed to be shaking. Enemies attacked from all sides. The residents were in a panic. At that moment, the weakened Chinfong was distracted by the clan leader Xiao. He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw that Qin had managed to free himself. In fact, those few threads were no match for the demonic eye of the Avenger. Chinfeng's soul had been greatly tempered in that battle, and was now different from the souls of other people. The village was already in flames. The 3 clans had planned this long ago. They sent pawns to probe and delay the village head, Dragon Whirlpool. The most dangerous part of the plan was that the head of the Hao clan had to personally confront Chinfong, while the others entered the city from the rear. Everyone knew that Qin was a responsible leader who would rush to the aid of his subordinates at the slightest threat. All they had to do was wait for him to reach the village, then both sides would lose. But Qin immediately saw through Xiao's plan. He wasn't worried about the village because there were 2 other creatures there who were just as strong as him. Unaware of this, the stunned Xiao rushed away as fast as he could. But it wasn't that simple. Chinfong sent hellfire after him. The guardian of the earth level, the ruler of the Xiao clan, was destroyed. The earth token of the Xiao clan was obtained. From his body, Qin extracted the 8th level skill, Liberation of the Divine Consciousness. The effect depends on the target. To understand, Qin activated the skill. This skill not only captured things at a distance, but also extracted them from a distance. If its form is changed, it can create threads that pierce the soul. Perhaps in this way, it will be possible to gain complete control over the enemy. Now he needed to try using this ability to figure out the village. As usual, Qin did it very quickly. Nothing less was expected of him. The enemies were defeated. Already 30 kilometers. That was the distance at which the Divine Consciousness ability worked, and that was clearly not the limit. There was a noise. Again, the residents thought that an earthquake had started. Qin turned around and saw that the city was being covered by a huge wave of water. Yuan Kun had arrived, the head of the Yuan clan. His abilities were superior to those of Xiao. Moreover, Yuan Kun was not alone. Standing next to him was a strange creature, a sea monster. The walls of the village of Dragon's Whirlpool were surrounded by water. Yuan did not join forces with the other clans and decided to act alone. Qin himself felt a strange pressure, and the source of this pressure was incomprehensible to him. Perhaps as Qin suspected, it came from the octopus-like creature on Yuan's shoulder. Water was in the air and it was getting closer. Sea monsters stood on the crest of the waves. These 3 Earth-level monsters were capable of harnessing the power of the Earth and the heavens for their own purposes. Even if they were capable of such a thing, according to Chinfong, their combat power ranged from 100 to 200 stars. However, heavenly-level monsters are capable of extracting the very essence of heaven and Earth. Their combat power reaches 2,000 stars. The water took on bizarre shapes. It was everywhere, in the sky and on the ground. If Qin couldn't even handle these 3, what hope was there for revenge for Qiyue? Fortunately, these 3 monsters were dealt with as quickly as possible. This greatly angered Yuan Kun. They were his subordinates. Now he had no intention of sparing Chinfong and decided to send him straight to hell. Yuan Kun's power changed in an instant. Now his power was comparable to that of the ancient ruins executioner, Zhu Yu. But Chinfong himself was also stronger than he had been that time. The rewards and ability points he had gained from the battle with the Kang clan had made him strong enough to stand up to Yuan Kun now. Now Qin had trapped Yuan Kun. Mind control was a very useful ability, and Chinfeng's mind was strong. Therefore, Yuan Kun was now Chinfeng's puppet. Yuan was in a wild rage. He couldn't understand how a human dared to consider him weaker. And then Kun decided to show what true heavenly level was. The octopus on his shoulder climbed onto his face. Whether it was a fusion skill or if this huge monster was Kun's real body, Chinfong didn't understand. But it was so huge that Chinfong looked like a pathetic insect in comparison. Yuan Kun declared that he could now destroy the village with a single move and asked Chinfong if he had any last wishes. Chia noticed that the mollusk's mouth was not moving in sync with its speech. He had to provoke it and find the location of the small monster, the main one. And Chinfong succeeded. He found the place where the one who had merged with Kun was hiding. He rushed into the attack, but the enemy clan members who had been taken prisoner in the village did not believe they would survive. They had been told that behind Yuan Kun stood a creature capable of turning a master of the heavens into a demigod in the blink of an eye. No matter how strong Qin was, he would not win. The villagers, on the other hand, believed in their village head and thought that no matter who this monster was, Qin would defeat him. The monster's tentacles were slippery and elastic, and as soon as Qin tried to strike, the sword bounced off. But it would be quite difficult to get close to where the little monster was sitting because there were tentacles everywhere. An ice storm was also not an option. It would be difficult to freeze the seawater. And the appearance of a dragon would cause huge waves that could flood the entire village. The only option left left was a thunderstorm, which Chin decided to try as a last resort. But the huge octopus only felt a pleasant tingling sensation from the storm. If he continued in the same vein, Chin would soon die of exhaustion. He had to come up with something else. Chin summoned Xiao Luan. Chin wanted to try merging their souls to gain her power. However, Chin did not know how this would affect Xiao Luan herself, but the phoenix trusted her master and wanted to follow him, so she agreed. After merging with Xiao Luan, Chin became equal in strength to the sea monster. Now he could easily grab the tentacles and hurt the monster. Thanks to the phoenix's fire, the monster lost 2 tentacles. But as long as there was water, the monster could grow new ones endlessly. But this did not scare Chinfong, because he had decided to simply dry up the lake around his village if necessary. The villagers watched the battle with indescribable admiration. It was a battle of gods. The octopus could already feel that it was beginning to lose to Chinfong, and no tricks were helping. The monster was on its last breath, and now it was defeated. For his victory, Chin received 90 million energy points. The monster was destroyed before the soul merging process was complete, so Xiao Lo was fine. It was dangerous. Moving mountains and draining seas. That was the true power of demigods. It was a pity that Chin could only experience this during the soul merging process. The endless extraction from the octopus's body was complete. The 8th level skill Octopus Demigod was obtained. Skill compatibility was detected. The skill Shadow Octopus was obtained. Now Chin can use the power of a demigod even without merging. This is very interesting. And he activated the Shadow Octopus ability. The shadow grew larger. While Chin was testing his new power, he didn't notice a small octopus emerge from under the monster's body and merge with Kun. The octopus planned to return to the beast god. Using his new sense, Chin determined that almost all of the members of the Ye and Fei clans were here. The same could not be said for the members of the Yuan clan. Yuan Kun was confident that he could handle it alone. By activating the land contracts, Chin became the owner of the territories of the Zong, Fei, Ye, and Yuan clans. He also gained complete control over public buildings. The residents of the Yuan clan were waiting for the return of their chief. Suddenly, the portal activated. But it wasn't Yuan Kun who appeared from there. It was a clone of Chinfong, and he began to destroy his enemies. It was no surprise that the Yuan clan was the best among the Guardians. Nearly 100,000 people, almost like the entire population of Trez combined. About 60,000 were human level, 30 were earth level, and 10 were heaven level. If all of them were destroyed, Chinfeng's combat power would increase to 4,000 star. Chin methodically set about doing this. Next, he had to complete the 3rd stage of his god-level mission. He had to obtain the seal of the god of beasts. Finally, Chin found the place. The miracle capable of resurrecting Qi Yue was here. He had long planned to do this and had been looking for a way. At least 100,000 ferocious monsters must be killed. This will be difficult. The time limit was 24 hours, but Chin believed that would be enough. The ancestral temple had been guarded by the strongest for 1,000 years. There were 10,000 monsters here, whose combat power ranged from 1,000 to 2,000 stars. They can be divided into 8 types: gluttonous frogs, monkey-like large snakes, phoenixes, tigers, unicorns, spiders, and crows. Chinfeng's agility had been upgraded to rank A, and most of his other stats had also improved during the battle with the beasts. In the middle of the temple stood a pedestal with a coffin on it. Suddenly, the lid opened. A masked man surrounded by golden chains rose from the coffin. He was chained to it. Rising into the air, he declared that he no longer felt the aura of the 9 animal emperors. This man was the god of beasts himself. The god of beasts already knew about Chinfeng and that he had destroyed all 9 of them. It was a rather delicate situation, but as long as he had the seal of the god of beasts, he could create an infinite number of monsters. After creating several beast gods, he ordered them to destroy Chinfeng. Chinfeng had just gotten rid of all 100,000 ferocious beasts. In addition, Chinfeng managed to discover an unusual talent while completing this task. The talent was ranked B and had a 20% chance of success. The percentage of success was low, but Chin combined this talent with the 4th level lucky skill. He was able to combine the fire arrow and sunlight pillar skills. The result was the sun arrow skill. This skill was also 8th level. That was excellent. And then Chinfeng was attacked. Monsters sent by the god of beasts appeared. They gave off a very frightening aura. Thus, Chinfeng realized that the god in the tower had awakened. Chin summoned a thunderstorm. He decided to use his divine consciousness because he realized that otherwise he would hardly win. But the god of beasts cut off this ability, causing Chinfeng pain. However, Chin managed to notice the seal with which the god controlled the beasts. In that case, there was no need to deal with all of them. Breaking the tower window, Chin flew inside. And he came face to face with the god of beasts. He was of imperial level with a combat power of 6,500 stars. The tower began to collapse. The god told Chinfeng that he could sense the energy of many laws emanating from him, and it was no surprise that the 9 had been unable to compete with him. Monsters created by the god began to surround Chinfeng from all sides. There were many of them. Qian decided to try out his sun arrow ability on them. The arrows flew out, destroying every single beast. But this did not bother the god of beasts. Broken tools were useless to him. In order to return to the realm of the gods, he conducted various experiments on humans and animals, resulting in an octopus with the power of a demigod. But this was still not enough. If the god wanted to return, he needed to obtain the body of 9. The god spread his arms wide. Above his head hung the essence of the spirit of the patron of the south, the essence of the spirit of the white tiger, and the essence of the spirit of the unicorn. Thanks to this, he used the seal of the god of beasts to purify spirits and increase his power. If the fusion of essences was successful, the power of the god of beasts would become incredible. Qin had to stop this. But Chinfong was not even allowed to approach the beast god. He was protected. The chains of the god transformed into powerful monsters, the nebula and the blackness. These two were different from those who had come before. They were humans, not animals. Apparently, the beast god had resurrected them to protect him. Apparently, the seal could resurrect, and it could resurrect Qi Yue. Qin fought the monsters for this. His motivation was stronger than usual. Therefore, Qin was confident that he would win. Nebula was defeated. There was one left. Chinfong dealt with blackness fairly quickly with the help of the shadow octopus. The god of beasts was pleasantly surprised by Chinfeng's speed and strength. He had expected less. The synergy of the spirits was complete. The god planned to take over Chinfeng's body. An incredibly powerful wave of energy engulfed Chinfeng, but he continued to advance. When Qin summoned an ice storm, he noticed that time seemed to slow down, and the speed at which the ice wall was being built dropped. One of the phoenix spirits attacked Chinfeng. He barely managed to dodge it, and now a tiger was running towards him. Chinfeng managed to defeat the tiger, but it turned out that as long as the god of beasts was alive, they would be reborn endlessly. Then Qin realized that he had to destroy all three of them at once. The shadow octopus was very helpful in dealing with the beasts, but the most important thing was to get to the beast god himself. He decided to use a thunderstorm to try to paralyze him, and it worked. However, he was unable to seize the seal because the god had managed to hide it in his clothes, and when Qin was about to deliver the final blow, he was thrown aside. The god of beasts took his true form, a huge monster with only half a body. He was enormous, with clawed, hairy paws and huge teeth. Then the god did something that made Chinfeng unable to move. Golden light flowed around him. Things were looking bad. If Qin wanted to control the course of this battle, he would have to go on the offensive. But for now, he was only taking blows. He had to stay on the right side because the god's left arm was not encased in metal like his right. Once again, Qin used his shadow tentacles and an icy storm at the same time. But the god disappeared only to suddenly reappear behind Chinfeng and grab him in his huge fist. He had no strength left and was covered in wounds, but Qin believed he still had a chance to defeat the god of beasts. Grabbing his sword, Qin rushed straight at the beast god, but it disappeared again. However, Qin already knew that the god was behind him again, just like last time. Therefore, turning sharply and unexpectedly, Chinfeng struck, but he stumbled upon the heavenly chains. Chinfeng's trick enraged the beast god, and he went mad. Heavenly chains began to fly around. At the ends of the chains were the tips of fiery arrows, and they were all aimed at Chinfeng. They all struck the spot where Chinfeng had been standing a second earlier, but he managed to duck upward. He climbed up the chains to the god of beasts himself. The chains aimed at Chinfeng again. He stood motionless until the arrow came close, and then Qin quickly jumped back, but the arrow could not be stopped and pierced the god's arm. He writhed in pain. And while the god was distracted, Qin, with the help of the Imperial Dragon, burned the god of beasts to ashes. Now the seal belongs to Chinfeng. He hoped that with the seal he would be able to revive Qi Yue. Suddenly, everything around him began to spin, and someone called Chinfeng by name. Standing before him was a ghost. Qin realized that this was the Long Zhu that the Avenger had been searching for. The ghost agreed that he was Long Zhu, but he also said that Qin was now Long Zhu too. The same blood flowed through their veins. Long Zhu continued, saying that Zhu Yue was just a pawn and that Chinfeng would soon face stronger opponents. The stronger Qin became, the more power Long Zhu could use. Long Ji refused to answer any more questions and told Qin to leave before it was too late. Then Qin passed out. He was awakened by the phoenix Xiao Luan. She contacted him through a mental connection and told him that the Punisher would soon be in the village. It turned out that Qin had been unconscious for a whole day, and a new day had already begun. The sky was stained red. Qi Yue's revival would have to be postponed indefinitely. The village of Dragon Whirlpool was on the brink of disaster. Chinfeng had to return as soon as possible. Most of the villagers had already reached level 10, and believed they could stand up to the Punisher until the village had arrived. The executioner Zhu Yu had not wasted any time either and had become significantly stronger. Qin returned almost on time. But the number of people killed in the area by the Punisher alone was already almost 58,000. People from other villages had not reached the required level. The final stage of the trial was divine punishment, and that was Zhu Yu's job. Entire villages were destroyed. The residents were left without a roof over their heads. Those residents who survived. And so she approached the Dragon's Abyss, where she was met by Qin, and the battle began immediately. At this stage, the powers of Zhu Yu and Chinfeng were almost equal. Both had become stronger. Of course, Zhu Yu believed that this would be enough to suppress the immature dragon inside Chinfeng. She had no idea that the dragon was already much stronger than before. The power of the shadow octopus that Qin attacked was at least semi-divine, and the Punisher couldn't believe that Qin possessed it. The tentacles closed over Zhu Yu's head and her eyes showed real panic, but the executioner managed to break free from the tentacles' trap. She was furious, and Qin pounced on her again. Now Qin was striking her with his own hands, without any magical intervention or skills. The executioner's mask opened. It was a face with 8 eyes, the second form of the demonic eye. Now there were no restrictions on the radius of action. And now Zhu Yu could block the actions of anything in this world. Now she attacked. But the executioner didn't even notice that a clone was attacking her. Qin laughed at her. The real one approached from behind and grabbed Zhu Yu. Releasing his divine consciousness, Qin dragged the Punisher underground into a tunnel. They were underground. Where there was no sunlight, Zhu Yu's abilities were useless. This was the arena Qin had chosen for battle. But this did not scare the executioner Zhu Yu. She still considered Chinfeng to be much weaker than herself. Then Qin activated the power of the beast god. The fact that Qin possessed the seal came as a complete surprise to Zhu Yu. It was no wonder that Qin had managed to achieve the power of a demigod. They began to fight. The executioner was still strong. Even without the light of the sun, she hurt Chinfeng, and her attacks were powerful. Then Qin summoned his patrons, the unicorn tiger and the dragon. They tormented Zhu Yu. And when she weakened, shadow tentacles grabbed the Punisher. It was revenge for Qi Yue. Bringing his hand to Yu Yu's head, Qin tore off her mask and demanded that she show her face. She refused, and Qin summoned a Tyrannosaurus to finish her off. The executioner was destroyed. An assistant appeared and reported that for destroying the Guardian and saving his village single-handedly, Qin had earned a considerable amount of points and characteristics. Subsequently, Chinfong received a divine essence through divine extraction. Now everything was ready. Chinfong immediately began the ritual to resurrect Qi Yue. And he succeeded. She fell right into Chinfeng's arms alive and unharmed. However, he was unable to wake Qi Yue, so Qin turned to his assistant for help. It turned out that Qin had found an incomplete method of resurrection in the memory of the deity. The seal of the god of beasts can summon the soul, and his bone marrow can reconstruct the body. However, the line between life and death is not easy to cross. She needs help with this. Only then can she be fully revived. To do this, Chinfong needs the divine pearl of nirvana. Legend has it that this is the greatest treasure of the fire spirit tribe. Upon completing the newcomer's mission, all movement restrictions will be lifted, and Qin will be able to find the tribe. At the village meeting, Qin assigned each person their area of responsibility for the duration of his absence. It was already known that no village in the first district except Dragon's Pool had survived the divine punishment. A proposal was made to give the people from the destroyed villages blood in exchange for their labor. With the help of the portal, Chinfong began his search for the tribe of spirit and fire. Permission for teleportation was not granted. Qin would be sent to the Temple of 1,000 Directions. Someone was approaching the tribe's village. The residents were ready to defend themselves. A challenger from another region, incredibly strong. The elder could barely sense his presence. If they managed to destroy him, they would gain a great deal. Without further ado or greetings, the tribe rushed at Chinfong as a mob. This tribe also traded women. Qin split the cage in which the girl was sitting with a single blow of his sword. And he went after the tribe too. As in most cases, Qin quickly dealt with his enemies. The girl wanted to ask him a question. Suddenly, another girl jumped out and demanded that her sister be released. She had a bow and arrows. The arrow almost hit Chinfong. The girl from the cage rushed to him and begged him to spare her sister. The girl Feng Shi was a princess from the Phoenix clan. The second girl with the arrows was her younger sister, Feng Ying. The Phoenix clan had long been rejected by the heavens, so they were neither guardians nor pretenders. Then Qin asked them about the fire spirit tribe. The girl said that Qin was too late. They had been destroyed by the Sing clan. In each district, there are usually 5 to 10 guardian clans that operate independently, keeping each other in check. But 1,000 years ago, a clan called Sing appeared in the area. They were strong, united, and ready for anything. It absorbed the other guardian clans, subjugating the entire district. A week ago, the pretenders arrived. The clan learned the location of all the villages, and after the punishers left, they began to exterminate the pretenders. The entire region, 1,257 people, fell into their hands. Fortunately, the Phoenix clan is hidden from the outside world and protected by a magical law. But sooner or later, the Singus will find them. Apart from these 2 girls, there are no other members of the Phoenix clan left. Thus, it can be concluded that the Sing clan has the treasures of the other guardians, and the divine pearl of nirvana as well. And then Qin sent Feng Xi and Feng Ying to tell him everything they knew about this clan. The location of the Sing clan was the Xingshan Palace. The residents came out into the streets and all looked up at the sky. Someone landed in their village. The clan members told the stranger that strangers were not allowed there. But the monster didn't care. 12 Earth-level guardians had already been destroyed. They managed to exterminate all the guardians and pretenders, and Chinfong was interested in how they did it. Surely the chief of the tribe was very powerful, at least at the divine level. The dinosaur's body was uncomfortable for the girls Feng Xi and Feng Yin, but it was necessary. The transformation pills proved to be very useful. Only this way would they not arouse suspicion. But that was only what they thought. The young master already knew that there were 3 savages on the palace grounds. Having made their way inside, they no longer needed to hide, and Qin restored his and the girls' true appearances. The clan leader immediately told Chinfong that he could join their clan if he voluntarily gave up the Phoenix clan princess. However, Chinfong had a different proposal. He wanted the young master to submit to him. The lord began to bargain. He promised Chinfong women, luxury, and gifts. But before he could finish, he was instantly beheaded. However, he was immediately resurrected, and he immediately began to bargain again. Qin asked about the Pearl of Nirvana. The young lord said he was willing to give it to Chinfeng. Such an acquaintance was useful to him. Of course, no one intended to cooperate with each other. The young gentleman almost immediately tried to attack Chinfeng, but he didn't take into account that Chinfeng's reaction was too good. The octopus's tentacles trampled the young gentleman into the ground. The ability to regenerate greatly interested Chinfeng, and he wanted to study it. The clan chief finally showed up to save his son, but it was only the young master who thought he would be saved. A whirlpool swirled the young master around and he disappeared. In the end, he begged for mercy, but the chief decided that his son was to blame for everything. The disobedient son was reborn in his father's body. The chief was great and multifaceted. He wore bright clothes. The clan chief already knew everything about the pretender Chinfeng. He announced that if Qin could defeat him, he would receive the Sing clan and everything that belonged to it. In front of all his people, the chief swore that he would not cheat. The girls of the Phoenix clan tried to dissuade Chinfeng because the chief was too strong. However, Qin accepted the challenge and immediately activated the seal of the god of beasts, transforming himself. The combination of 3 semi-divine abilities into 1 divine ability. It was risky but powerful. 2 divine-level masters fought. The entire village was in flames. The fact that the chief destroyed his village without hesitation or regret surprised Chinfeng greatly. This Sing clan was very strange. Everything around them was engulfed in flames, yet no one moved. They were like dolls. Then Qin decided to use his divine consciousness to check if these creatures were real. But he couldn't figure it out. Apparently, the only way to get answers was to win this battle. The Singu chief was indeed very strong. Everything around him was flying and burning. The shadow octopus couldn't handle it. The chief tore it to pieces. Fortunately, Qin had used the Eye of the Future beforehand. It could be used once a day and showed the future. So when the chief attacked him and almost killed him, Qin dodged in time. The chief knew about Chinfeng's ability to see the future. Qin realized that the chief could read his thoughts. The first stage of testing Chinfeng was over according to the chief. It was his turn. Chinfeng's powers were running out and the chieftain grabbed the shadow octopus with his threads. It was time to come up with something too. Qin began to form a formation of fire arrows. But the chief interrupted the formation by destroying the dome in which the arrows were gathering for the attack. Much time had passed since the battle began, but the intensity of the chief's attacks did not wane. Such fierce attacks definitely took a lot of energy. Qin wondered where the chief was getting it from. And then the threads captured Chinfeng, wrapping him from head to toe. He found himself among others entangled in this web. They hung everywhere like cocoons. So that was the source of energy. The villain was using his own people to feed his powers. He was so cruel, even to his own people. The more Qin moved and tried to break free, the tighter the bonds held him. Meanwhile, the chieftain approached the princess of the Phoenix Order and her sister. The girls needed to stall for time. The older one declared that the chieftain did not deserve to receive the divine artifact, and that his curse was his fate, from which he could not escape. Then the chieftain began to use force. The girls fought back as best they could, but they were no match for him. Fengxi was protected by Chinfeng's mental power, and she moved toward him while her sister distracted the chief. Touching Fengxi's shackles with phoenix fire, she freed Chinfeng. She asked him to use her. Qin did not immediately understand what she meant. Meanwhile, the chief demanded that Fengxi's younger sister tell him where the princess had gone. Suddenly, the chief's body was pierced by a fiery arrow shot from below. The bow was in Qin's hands. The phoenix bow. The arrow split the chieftain's body in two. A whirlpool formed, engulfing all of the chief's servants. Absorbing their strength, it transformed into a monster. Once again, Chinfeng pierced it with a golden arrow from his bow. The chieftain collapsed onto the remains of his village. He devoured all the members of his clan at once and thus had no more potential sources of energy. Everything would be decided by a single blow. A huge fiery arrow flew toward what was left of the monster. It pierced his entire body. What Chinfeng saw inside shocked him greatly. It was the Pearl of Nirvana. Finally, Chinfeng had found it. With its help, he would be able to revive Qi Yue. The princess beat Chinfeng to it and took the pearl in her hands. She had no intention of giving it up. When Qin demanded it, Fengxi squeezed the pearl and broke it into small pieces. At such a barbaric act, Chinfeng screamed in despair and rage at the same time. Chinfeng lunged at the princess and demanded an explanation. She said that this was the only way to destroy Xingtian completely. It turned out that the Feng clan was the common name for the tribe of fire spirits. 1,000 years ago, the Xing clan was defeated in a great battle and came to these lands. Their leader Xingtian could not accept defeat and, after learning that the Feng clan possessed a valuable artifact, stole it. He hoped that he could become a fire deity by using the power of the pearl. But a thief is a thief. Even after taking the pearl by force, Xingtian was unable to unleash its full power. Because he did not know how to do it properly, he was cursed by the pearl. Using its power meant sucking the life out of the people of Xingtian. To begin with, he ordered his people to kidnap people from other tribes and consume them. Then he began to consume his own people, until there was only one left. The members of the Xing clan were just puppets created to maintain the beautiful image of a prosperous tribe. The chieftain gave them a modicum of intelligence, but in the end, these puppets still became a resource. This whole story didn't really bother Chinfeng. He was really mad that the pearl was destroyed and wanted to know why. The pearl and its owner become one. According to the princess, the remnants of consciousness trapped inside the pearl would inevitably influence Chinfeng's essence. Perhaps there was some truth in her words, but Chinfeng couldn't accept that he couldn't help Ziyue. But Fengxi calmed him down. The Nirvana Pearl was actually the crystallized form of the power of the Feng clan members. Nirvana meant rebirth, but perhaps it is only possible after the clan leader destroys the old pearl. Then the head would inherit the power of generations and be able to create a new pearl, which is what Fengxi did. As a sign of gratitude and recognition, Fengxi presented it to Chinfeng. Now he could become the new god of fire. After accepting the pearl, Qin immediately began to revive Qi Yue right there on the spot. After the ritual was completed, Qi Yue finally regained consciousness. She had never been so happy before. The contenders from the 6575th district sent a monster, and the residents prepared to fight. The monster was wildly enormous, and no one believed it could be defeated. Fortunately, their boss Qin arrived in time and asked Qi Yue to use her ability to help him. The Dragon Whirlpool Village had completed its task of ascending to the divine realm, and could now participate in the great battle. The first stage of this great battle is about to begin, and all the elders have been asked to prepare. Who will ultimately win the crown? The answer to this question remains open, for now.